And why Jim's favorite is all ahead on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The House is expected to take up a budget resolution tonight as lawmakers scramble to finalize a government spending plan to avoid a shutdown next month. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the bill outlines broad spending priorities for the next fiscal year.
The budget resolution lays out a $1.5 trillion spending floor with cuts across committees that target about $2 trillion. The bill contains a number of provisions, including funding to boost security at the southern border, new spending on defense, and extending tax cuts. Lawmakers on both sides have voiced concerns. Some Republicans argue the plan doesn't go far enough in cutting government spending. Democrats criticize proposed reductions to safety net programs. With Republicans holding a razor-slim majority in the House, for passage, they can afford to lose just one vote if all Democrats vote against the measure. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
There's confusing guidance from the Office of Personnel Management on a memo sent over the weekend to federal employees. It told workers to list 5 things they accomplished in the prior week. Several agencies told their staff not to reply, but DOGE leader Elon Musk warned people who failed to respond could be fired. And last night, the administration said managers should now evaluate non-responses to their instructions. The aid organization Doctors Without Borders has halted operations in the largest refugee camp in Sudan. It's been attacked for months by the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. It has been fighting Sudan's army for nearly 2 years. NPR's Emmanuel Akinwotu reports.
Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, says it's closed its operations and medical facilities in Zamzam refugee camp, which hosts at least 500,000 people. According to the Food Security Initiative, IPC, tens of thousands of people in the camp are suffering from famine. MSF blamed intense fighting between the RSF and forces aligned with Sudan's army. The aid group says the RSF had launched attacks and artillery shelling on the camp over the last 10 months. Zamzam camp lies on the outskirts of the city of El Fasher, one of the last parts of the western region of Darfur that the RSF do not control. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Lagos.
Pope Francis remains in critical condition in a Rome hospital. NPR's Fatima Al-Kassab reports the Vatican says he has shown slight improvement.
The Vatican said the pontiff had, quote, rested well the whole night and was now sufficiently recovered to resume some work, following the severe respiratory difficulties he suffered over the weekend. The 88-year-old has been in hospital for more than 10 days now, battling pneumonia in both lungs, as well as more recently, mild kidney failure, which doctors now say appears to be under control.
NPR's Fatima Al-Kassab reporting. On Wall Street, the Dow's down 80 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Harvard Undergrad Ukraine Solidarity Group led a vigil on the steps of Memorial Church in Harvard Yard yesterday, marking the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Crimson reports that Ukrainian students and members of the Solidarity Group gave speeches honoring the ongoing efforts of the Ukrainian military. The group also lit candles to commemorate lives lost and disrupted by this conflict. Governor Maura Healey pausing the closure of the Pocasset Mental Health Center last month. The governor proposed a budget that would have closed the 16-bed state-run facility that serves adults with acute mental health challenges. The proposal triggered a major backlash on the Cape. Healey says her decision last night came after weeks of receiving feedback from patients, families, and staff about the important role Pocasset Mental Health Center plays in the community. In a statement, Healey said that she plans to bring together stakeholders to review the care offered at the facility and make recommendations on the best path forward. Plymouth and Barnstable District State Senator Dylan Fernandez issued a statement saying that he's grateful to the governor for supporting mental health needs in the region. Fernandez said people spoke out against the proposed closure, and Healey listened to those concerns. In sports, the Celtics are in Toronto tonight. Toronto Blue Jays are at the Garden tonight, racing off against the Bruins. Exhibition baseball, the Red Sox play Atlanta today. And in the forecast, clouds may be low 50s today. Cloudy near 40 overnight, sun clouds and upper 40s tomorrow. 48 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at rwjf.org.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Congressman Keating from the Cape zooms in from Washington at 12:30. We're going to talk to him, of course, about what's happening with Ukraine and Russia and also the German elections. We're going to be back here at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with our first ever edition of Ask the Auditor. Diana DiZoglio will take our questions and yours. Good morning, Jim.
And by the way, we thought the primary topic, I assume will be, is the ballot question 72% of the people voted for to audit the legislature. But she took a pretty controversial move yesterday, potentially putting a, whatever that is, an obstacle to implementation of the MBTA Communities Act, the housing thing, saying it's an unfunded local mandate. We'll talk to her about that as well. But according to the latest polling, less than 40% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the economy, touted by his supporters as the so-called main issue we heard so much about in the 2024 election. And a lot of American shoppers say they've changed their spending habits as well in a backlash against corporations which are shifting policies to align with the Trump administration. That's according to a new Harris poll. Almost a third of Americans say they don't want to support the Trump economy this year at all. That could be for plenty of reasons. Political stances, disgust with American consumerism. More generally, Tesla sales, by the way, are way down globally, obviously driven by Musk's alignment with Trump. So the phone and text lines are open, 877-301-8970. Are you among the people who are voting with your dollar as a form of resistance, or if you're a Trump supporter, as a form of support? And if you're somebody who aligned with Trump on the campaign trail last November, as he promised to lower prices on day one, how long of a leash are you willing to give the president before you say this isn't what I voted for? Is this even worse for him, the state of the economy and inflation, than shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue? Call or text 877-301-8970 is the number. I mean, all these polls, while his support is only in the 40-some% range, a significant majority are very unhappy with how he's handling the economy. Only 32%, which is bare bones kind of number, are with him on inflation. How he's handling inflation. So I have to say, I know we've said this 5,000 times before, this may be a real problem for Donald Trump. Is that naive?
You know, I don't know. It's early. I think things are going to change a lot depending on what happens with a lot of federal workers, because that's going to really impact people. You know, he may be able to cure avian flu. I don't know if that's...
I'm sure he'll do that.
But I'm not sure what's going to happen.
With the head of HHS who doesn't believe in vaccines, I don't think he's curing anything really quickly.
Did you read this thing that's in our Comrex thing about this
NPR
report? Yeah, NPR is just reporting that consumer confidence falls by the most since 2021 amid rising concerns about inflation. Consumer confidence dropped by the most since August 2021 as people grow more concerned about inflation as a conference board.
Yeah, but you read the rest of it. You see who they blame for it? Obama. I mean, that is essentially what Donald Trump will say when he's asked the question about this. It's all Obama. And but I have to say, it is the economy, stupid. It has always been the economy, stupid. Even before James Carville uttered those words in whatever it was, 1992. I think this could be a problem for him. I mean, people are obsessed with egg prices and gas prices and inflation, which is only going to, he said yesterday, the tariffs are going to happen against Mexico. We're being mistreated very badly, I think he said, against Mexico and Canada. That's only going to raise prices for people, even if it does something good in the long run, as he said it will. I think this is going to erode support for him more than his cruelest policies, which apparently half of the public doesn't give a damn about.
But I do think it's interesting, according to The Guardian, that 4 of 10 Americans have shifted their spending policies to align with their moral views in this Harris poll just from the last few months. Particularly younger people, Gen Z, are ready to do this, and African Americans or Black Americans are ready to do this. They're not going as much to Target and to Walmart and to Amazon and to Whole Foods, and I got to commend those people because I live a half a block from Whole Foods. I tend to go there more than I should.
Yeah. Did you see, by the way, Tesla sales are down 50% in Europe?
I know.
I mean, they know how to do it. When they're not happy, they do something.
I feel bad for all these Tesla owners like you, Jim, because they're driving around in fear now. Some woman said how much she loved the car, brilliantly made car, and then somebody threw a whole. They were willing to give up their eggs, threw a whole carton of eggs on her windshield, and she couldn't see right after the election. So they were showing their dislike, and some people are having to put bumper stickers on their car that says, I bought this car before I realized what a jerk Elon Musk turned out to be.
Well, how about that guy yesterday when you were asking people what, in response to the Musk email to the 2.5 million federal employees, which, by the way, even some of Trump's own people are resisting on, and the Office of Personnel Management, which is essentially the federal HR, says you don't need to comply. Remember what the guy said he did last week? He bought an F Elon bumper sticker for his Tesla.
Yeah.
877-301-8970. Are you changing your shopping behavior as a form of resistance? Or if you're a Trump supporter, are you changing your shopping behavior as a form of support? And also, in terms of politics, do you think this failure to rein in inflation on day one, as he promised to do, has potential trouble for Trump, or will he just blame it on Musk or somebody else?
I think he's going to get some time on this. I really do.
I don't.
But I think the disorder is freaking some people out. That's what I think is
What the what?
The disorder, the chaos.
Who is it freaking out?
I think it's freaking out anybody who's got any relationship with a federal worker, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Where's the evidence of that?
Well, I think that's one of the things that people are talking about. It's not just inflation. I think it's also this sense of things are like out of control and crazy. I don't think, listen, look what happened yesterday. You know, we all grew up, if you're in the baby boom, you grew up hiding under your desk because the Russians were going to blow you to smithereens. And we were in the Cold War with the Russians, and Ronald Reagan talked about them as being the evil empire, and Mr. Gorbachev take down that wall. And we just all went through the saga of Navalny, Alexei Navalny, the hero that stood up to Putin, and one of many people that was poisoned by Putin and murdered by Putin. Yesterday, we threw over 80 years of an alliance with Europe because Donald Trump, for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason is, wants to be tight with Vladimir Putin.
Which Trump voter is no longer supporting Trump because of that? Do you know?
I think there are a lot of Republicans that are very upset by that because Republicans have historically been very hawkish and not crazy about. I mean, what is the explanation for this? Saying that Ukraine started the war?
No, it's a brilliant negotiating strategy that's going to bring peace to that part of the world. That's what it is.
Yeah,
So that's the argument.
I think that's a pretty shocking thing. We'll talk about that with Congressman
Listen,
Keating.
I think it's one of the most shocking things he's done. I just don't think that. I think what matters more to a supporter are the price of eggs than the survival of democracy.
Okay, well, we switched teams. We are now with the Russians
We're with
and the North Koreans.
Right.
And that's swell. 877-301-8970. Mary in the car. What do you think, Mary?
Hello, Mary.
I tell you what I think. I think, as we all know now, Trump's a Russian asset, if not Russian mafia. And his next move is going into Fort Knox, getting the gold, and giving it to Putin. He's already talking about getting in there. I mean, this is like he's taking down America. That's
By the way,
his goal. He's destroying it piece by piece, and that's what it's all about.
By the way, if people don't know, Mary, thanks for the call, don't know about the Fort Knox thing.
Yeah,
there's a conspiracy theory that there's no gold at Fort Knox, and Trump said he's going to personally go to Fort Knox to check it out to make sure the gold is there. That's what Mary is referencing. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Now, here's Will from Boston's analysis. Donald Trump could go to his supporters' home, shoot their dog himself, and they go through mental gymnastics to say it's not what he meant.
By the way, I think other than economic pocketbook things, I totally agree with Will. That is evidenced by how many times did we say on the show what he said about McCain, what he said about Khizr Khan, what he did on X or Y or Z or whatever it is, that was going to be the end. And obviously, grabbing him by the you-know-whats was clearly going to be the end.
Yeah.
And none of them were the end. I think pocketbook issues are very different. Kim and Norton, you're next on ball. And that's why I think he's president, in my opinion, because of two reasons. One, his anti-immigration stance, and two, his position that he could fix the economy starting on day one.
Well, you know, one thing I think is a real factor. Obviously, the Latino population has grown astronomically in the United States of America. And we had the gentleman on that has written the book about Latinos in America in the 20th century. And obviously, one of the big reasons you leave your country and uproot yourself to come to a different country, whether you did it now or 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, was to be able to make a living. So if you have come here, I think the Latino vote may not, grown up like little kids like we did, hiding under our desks, but their perspective may be just all about the economy. And that's, what is it, 40% of America now?
I think. Margot in Rhode Island says, I have stopped going to Target and other box stores like Walmart. Instead, we get a Costco membership and we'll drive the hour away to stock up once a month or so. And Walmart and Costco are on opposite sides of the DEI issue, as I think most people know.
Yeah, Costco is standing firm.
They are. Kim and Norton, welcome to the show. Hi, Kim.
Hi, thank you. Long time, sustainer, caller, all the things with me.
Thank you for all that.
I'm changing everything. Thank you. No, I'm changing everything. I'm not shopping at any of the big boxes. I am looking at brands. No Trader Joe's. I was going to buy a car this year. I've been looking to potentially buy a different house. My house would have been a good, affordable house for a small family in a nice suburban family area.
Hey, Kim, your connection is horrible. Did you say Trader Joe's was on your no shop list? Did you say that?
I did, absolutely.
What have they done? I'm embarrassed to say, I should know. What has Trader Joe's done that offended you?
They are part of the Musk and Bezos takedown of the labor board. They are union busters.
I'm embarrassed to say I was not aware. I'm glad you brought that to us attention.
So it's
We're going to check it out right now.
It's not DEI, it's union busting.
You know that he got rid of a couple of key members of the National Labor Relations Board, so they essentially can't do anything. And that is there to protect workers' rights, not just unionized workers' rights. Kim, we got to let you go. Thank you, only because your connection is horrible. 877-301-8970.
Here's Elisa who says, I'm one who's joined the spending cut wagon, and I didn't expect it to feel as good as it feels. I don't need stuff, and I'm saving money. I would spend mindlessly, and it really feels great.
You mean, Friday is the no-buy day or whatever?
Right.
I don't quite get the point. What is the point?
I think the point is buy everything on Wednesday and Thursday.
Well, that's like the tax-free weekend or whatever it is in August, which in Massachusetts, which is a total scam, essentially. Patrick in the car. I know small business people feel differently. My apologies. Patrick, hey, welcome. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. You guys
Marjorie,
are
to you.
awesome. I loved your conversation.
Thank you.
Jim, I'd like to add that third point why Trump was elected.
Why is that?
Was 4 years of Biden. That is the third bullet point. But back to our topic here.
Yep.
It's been 4 weeks. What time frame do you expect Americans to think that the policies are bad?
Well, I think I can answer, Patrick. I can answer the question. If Trump hadn't said repeatedly, "I will bring down prices beginning on day one," I think you are 100% right. The American people, even when suffering from economic pain, are patient and fairly understanding and realize the president can only do so much. But I am of the belief, and I'm dying to hear whether you agree, that a significant part of Trump's support on November 5th were economically strapped people who thought maybe he could start to bring prices down on November 1st, and it's now 30-some days in, and he hasn't. So is that a fair analysis, or is it unfair?
No, I disagree with the time frame. I think people understand that policies introduced at the federal government level are going to take some time. It's usually a year or two before they have any effect at all. And that's kind of the time frame when the inflation went bad with Biden, right? He got in, a year in or so when the inflation started hitting.
And then it started coming down. But let me ask you one more thing, Patrick. Only 32%, which I assume you know, is the lowest number any elected official gets on anything. Only 32% of Americans who were polled think they approve of what the president is doing on inflation now. That's ominous for him. You still don't think so?
Well, my opinion is wait and see what happens. I mean, I do not have the visibility of all these experts that he has hired on his team.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it takes time to make things happen. So I'm going to wait and see.
One last question for you, Patrick. If 6 months from now, or let's pick a date, a year from now, inflation was going up as it appears to be, tariffs, assuming they're implemented, additional tariffs, Mexico and Canada happen, and prices continue to go up, is your support for Trump going to be shaken or no?
My deadline is July 4th of 2026. That is the date when the Doge reports are planned to be released, I believe.
Okay.
That's the 250th anniversary of the U.S.
I was aware of that.
Planning on being in D.C., and that's my time.
Okay,
And it's
Patrick,
just before the elections.
Got it. Midterms.
Patrick,
Call
thank
us
you
again,
for the
Patrick.
call.
We appreciate your perspective. Thanks.
I think one of the things that's distressing is he really hasn't talked about it. We've been, Doge has been going wild, and we're talking about Russia, and we're talking about Ukraine, and we're talking about, Panama and Greenland and everything else. So there's been very little discussion by the president about the price of eggs or inflation in general. He's hardly
But the
mentioned
American
it.
people are talking about it. Would you not agree? I mean, I can't believe how many people in my world, and this has nothing to do with anti-Trump animus, are talking about the price of eggs. I mean, it's like a common discussion in the world in which I operate,
Well, you might think he might say that a lot of the problem is avian flu. You might think he might say that because that does seem to be the problem is avian flu. Anyway, Maureen in Newton, thank you for calling.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi, how you doing?
Excellent.
I'm calling because I have changed my consumer spending habits.
Mm-hmm.
Canceled the Wall Street Journal, canceled Instagram, stopped shopping at Whole Foods 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
I know, I'm trying to make a move here.
That's
and
impressive.
Also because my question is, thank you, what good does millions of dollars do to people like Bezos and Zuckerberg when they're completely unprincipled and spineless, ultimately?
Yeah, I wonder about that too, Maureen. Part of what you think you have when you have all that money is freedom.
Totally right. And we're wrong, obviously.
But I would mention this to Jim. I was talking to a young person last night who thought I was being naive, who said these guys are all a bunch of bums. Why do we expect that they're going to do the right thing? So I don't know, maybe I'm being hopelessly naive. Maybe because I thought Zuckerberg's married to a physician, and I usually think physicians are generally good people, that his wife might influence him somewhat. But thank you for the call, Maureen.
Like Senator Cassidy, the physician who voted to make
sure
we confirm.
I know.
Hey, Maureen, before you go away, did you do those things because you thought it would make a difference in the grand scheme of things, or did you do them because you wanted to be true to your principles and if it has an impact, it has an impact. If it doesn't, it doesn't?
I would say for both, because I do believe that one person can make a difference. Because if everyone starts to do it, then that's where we are.
Maureen, you're an inspiration.
But also in terms of someone's...
Good.
In terms of someone's spouse, I wanted to say, what about Usha Vance?
I know. I wonder about her all the time,
So
particularly since remember when the pastor Pastor Matt, what was his first name? Buddy's first name, Marion or something like that.
I can't remember.
Anyway, when she was talking to Trump in the church there, and the whole Trump family's there, and she's talking about how she was asking the president for mercy for the LGBTQ community, mercy for people that are suffering, mercy. And Vance, who apparently thinks that some of what the Nazis did was okay, according to his latest speech making over in Europe. Vance kept looking at her. 3 times he looked at her, kind of respond to what she was saying. And Usha Vance just looked straight ahead. I have no idea if she's down with the program or not, but sometimes I do wonder. Just like I wondered why Jill Biden didn't tell her husband, do not run.
Yeah, we thought Melania Trump was not with the program. We were wrong.
Well, she's
We were wrong.
She's just sort of a non-factor. I mean, I think she's an odd person.
We have no evidence that, is it Ursa is how you pronounce
Yeah.
it? We have no evidence she's a factor either. Why do you suggest that she may be?
Because she met him when he was still corresponding with his trans friend from studies, and when he was more of a Democrat, and when he had not turned into, sort of a guy that, like I said, has some common piece with people from, Hitler's regime, for goodness sakes.
By the way, before we take a break, an anonymous texter says, I cannot wait to buy everything in sight on Friday. I have no idea what that means, but I always love a contrarian.
They're protesting in the other direction.
I guess they are.
Okay, we are talking about getting more of your texts on the whole situation with this economic blackout, whether you're not buying at certain places that have backed off DEI efforts, or places that are down with Donald Trump, like Tesla. And Jim hasn't mentioned yet about his car, but
No, I don't intend to, but thank you for bringing it up.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
you're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library. It's streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on the Culture Show, Luna Luna. 36 years ago, Luna Luna landed in Hamburg, an arts amusement park full of rides and attractions by artists including Jean-Michel Basquiat, Keith Haring, and Salvador Dali. Then it fell into obscurity until now. The carnival has been revived in the exhibition Luna Luna Forgotten Fantasy, now open at The Shed in New York City. The creative forces that brought it to the East Coast join us. That and more today at 2 on the Culture Show on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Boston Children's Museum, featuring Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, a grr-rific exhibit. Open now through May 4th. Daniel and friends help young children navigate their world, and parents guide their journey. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org/Daniel Tiger. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with the auditor. She's been with us many times, but she's with us for the first time for Ask the Auditor, where you get to do just that. Ask her a question, make a comment, whatever moves you. If you're just tuning in today, we're talking about the economy, spending money as a form of resistance or a form of support for the things you care about. And we're also asking your political opinion as to whether or not Trump's inability to honor his commitment to the voters that he bring down prices on day one is an Achilles heel for him, or whether the Trump supporter who called a few minutes ago is right, and people are going to give Donald Trump much more time than I think they will. 877-301-8970. Let's go to San Francisco, where Brad is calling from. Hi there, Brad. Welcome.
Thank you for taking my call. It's my first call after listening for the last 5 years.
We really appreciate both. Thank you for doing it. Welcome.
And I'm also from Fall River originally. So
oh my goodness! Oh wow! Great. Nice to talk to you, Brad.
I'm actually the president of the Corky Road Club as we speak.
It's called the Corky Road Club in Fall River. Wow.
Yep. My grandfather was a founding member. My dad took me there when I was 5 years old. But to your topic,
wait! Don't leave us in the dark. What is the Corky Road?
It's an Irish bar, right? Wouldn't you call it that, Brad?
It's the oldest Irish bar and cultural center outside of Boston, 1936.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Wow.
Okay, Brad, what's up? Welcome.
So I think that this is an opportunity for Democrats to really talk about helping working class people by shopping local. You should shop locally, not because of some corporate DEI policy, but to support local working people.
You are totally right. And I have to say, we talk about it all the time. We echo your thoughts. And I like to think that occasionally, I don't know if I speak for you, Marjorie, we honor that notion of yours, but I think it's probably honored more in the breach. Do you do what you practice what you preach, Brad? Or just talk a good game like us?
It's the only thing I fight with my wife about. I refuse to shop online.
Good for you.
Because you have to send the stuff back. They take it back, but you do all the work for them for free, and you don't get to really see what you're getting until it's too late. So I do not shop online if I can absolutely avoid it.
Brad, that's a great message for your first call. Call us again. Thank you so much.
That is, I'm embarrassed to say one of the reasons I do buy stuff online.
Convenience. You're lazy.
Well, it's not just that.
Me
but
too.
If you go to like CVS now, half the stuff is behind a locked cabinet.
I don't think he means CVS. I think he means locally owned businesses.
But the stuff is the shelves are often not stocked. I mean, you notice that really often, and that's one of the things I think people like about Target, which we can't go to now anymore. That's not so hard for me to do, but they tend to have much better stocking in their shelves than like CVS and Walgreens.
Talk
what are you
about
laughing
dancing. At? That was. Why not just admit it?
That I don't go to Target?
No, that we both say exactly what Brad from San Francisco said, but we don't do it nearly as much as we preach it. And shame on us. I think he's totally right.
Yeah, I think.
By the way, that has nothing. I mean, for him, it may be a reaction to what's going on nationally. It's just the right thing to do about supporting small, local, independent businesses, like we try to do in the restaurant world.
Let's go to Dan in Gloucester. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
It's my first time calling after a long time listening.
Thank you too.
I teach political science at Harvard, and I teach a class about elections.
Oh.
I want to respond about Patrick, who said, he thinks people will give Trump a lot longer.
Yes.
And I think they probably will, but I also think, what does it mean for voters to give Trump time? Jim, you said you think that they're going to be against him sooner.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter until we see elections. And I think, really, that's the thing that we have to look to. Is when are the next elections? Obviously, we're not going to have federal elections for 2 years, but I think when we see these big statewide elections this fall in New Jersey, in Virginia, and also not for governors, but state legislatures in Louisiana and Kentucky, that's when we'll see really, are people sick of what Trump is feeding them? And I think before then, we can see polls go up and numbers go up and down, but all that is very ephemeral until there's actually something that puts somebody in power or takes somebody out of power.
Can I disagree with you on one front? I mean, you're the professor, so you know much more than I. I think the one interim impact that I care a lot about, for example, I think opposition is growing to the cruelty of Elon Musk. And while people won't have a referendum on Musk till all those elections, Donald Trump cares about being popular a lot, maybe even as much as he cares about making money. And I think if Musk cruelty starts and continues to turn people off, I think we see a lot less of it, which is good for people who really can't fight back.
Maybe we see Trump dump Musk. Maybe we see him
that's
saying,
what I think.
Here's the moment where I can make a turn and still get people on my side, but make a huge turn in my policies. And we certainly see him do reverses in his policies in his first term, too. So that would be a really interesting indicator. We could definitely see that as soon as the summer, once unemployment numbers start going up with all these federal employees, people spending less money on Starbucks and stuff in D.C., and all of a sudden you get the economy going down.
Well, Dan, if I may, one last thing, and I hope you call us again and sooner than your first call. I think we're seeing it already today. The administration, through the Office of Personnel Management, did a 180 on Musk. Trump is sitting with Macron in the Oval Office yesterday saying something like, I think Musk is on the right track, or it's a really good thing he's doing, whatever. By the end of the day, the Office of Personnel Management was telling the federal employees they didn't have to comply with the Doge demand, that they justify their existence or they're gone. So I think already.
I think that's a great point. Maybe that's a canary in the coal mine that Musk's days are numbered. I think that would be a really good indicator. But, it could also be just an ephemeral, we turn to something else next week and forget it.
But to me, Dan, you're the political guy. But to me, when he gets sick of Musk, he's just going to throw Musk overboard, blame Musk for everything. And then the people that like Trump will continue liking Trump. I don't think.
Yeah, but at least the cruel policies, which covers almost everything of Musk, may disappear. Dan, that was a great call. Call us again soon. Jamie in New Hampshire is really singing my tune. I cannot wait to be discussing daylight saving time.
Yeah.
I am counting down
Not
the
long.
days. So am I, Jamie.
March 9th.
I am there, totally.
877-301-8970. Let's go to Genesis in Holliston. Hi, Genesis.
Hello, Genesis.
Oh, sorry, it's Jennifer, but...
Jennifer,
sorry.
we're really, this is pathetic. We're so sorry. It's pathetic.
No worries.
Hello, hi.
No. Hi. I've called a few times, but just as context before my remark is I am a gay woman, married, and have at least a exploring transgender child. So a lot of how I'm feeling is panic, basically. But as far as the economy goes, I wonder if I don't think I don't think it matters if Trump cares what we think anymore, because I'm really not sure that he's in control. And even if he was, he has put Project 2025 into effect. The leaders of the cabinet now are all part of that. And if we as voters do change our minds, or the Trumpers, does it matter who's listening to us anymore?
Well, you may be onto something, and I surely can't question your feelings, and I think I'd feel exactly like you do if I was in your spot. And so who do you think is in charge, Jennifer, before you go away? Is it Elon Musk or who?
I think probably Musk, and when I really let the conspiracy theories go, I feel like, is Trump actually a Russian asset? I feel ridiculous saying it, but
Jennifer, can I tell you something?
So
Bill Keating Congressman is going to be on. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask him. And so you don't feel conspiratorial, as I've said before, Andrew McCabe, who was the acting head of the FBI at one point and most of his career, the number 2 at the FBI.
Now it's Dan Bongino,
was asked on CNN, was asked on CNN a couple of years ago by Anderson Cooper, is it possible that Trump is a Russian asset? And the former acting head of the FBI didn't pause for a second and said yes. So you were in very good company. Jennifer, please call us again, and good luck to your family. We really appreciate your call.
Well, it is astounding. I mean, besides the economic thing, as I said at the beginning, we formed these alliances after World War II. We used to be the leader of the free world. What are we now?
Well, if you took the politics out of this, and I think we said this the other day, and just describe exactly what you described, what Trump did, the vote with North Korea and Russia, and I think Iran yesterday, and whatever
Belarus,
it was,
all
at the
these
UN,
companies that are in that circle around Russia.
Right. Zelensky's a dictator. I don't know whether Putin is,
right,
etc. That is the classic description of somebody who works for another country. So we'll see. We'll ask Bill Keating about it, as I say, when he joins us at 12:30.
Okay, we are moving on. Thank goodness. After a quick break, we're going to talk to NBC Sports Boston, Trenny Casey. She's going to talk about whether an WNBA team might be coming to Boston.
I agree with that.
I know. And the Yankees, the New York Yankees, can now have facial hair. This is like a revolution, Jim. But of course, Jim Browdy is beside himself over a change in the NFL rules. Trenny and I are here to help Jim negotiate this crisis in his NFL watching. Trenny Casey is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
After fleeing civil war in Syria, 2 musicians took up residence in Germany, where they teamed up with a local guitar player to make a new kind of sound.
A bit of classical, orchestra, or flamenco, and each one has a different background with the music and the instrument.
Transnational music, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Simmons Leadership Conference, a one-day event filled with inspiration, skill building, and networking. Thursday, March 20th, in person in Boston and online. InclusiveLeadership.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer, the Unclaimed Property Division, is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Congressman Bill Keating, who, by the way, is the ranking Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, which obviously is pretty relevant right now. Can't wait to hear what his colleagues are telling him. He zooms into the show at 12:30, and tomorrow, as we said, at 1 o'clock. Diana DiZoglio, the auditor, joins us for the first time, taking questions and comments from listeners. That's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. By the way, before we introduce Trenny, an anonymous texter says, I'm usually a capital letter big supporter of Jim, but it seems he's in a real mood today, and it's uncomfortable listening to his tone. Please ask him to try to fake it today and tone it back a little bit.
Well,
thank you very much.
I'll
do my best.
The anonymous texter doesn't realize why Jim is struggling today.
Well, you're going to bring it up right now?
He is struggling. And he's struggling because
Should I first say Trenny Casey is here?
Oh, yes.
For
Yeah,
NBC
I can't wait to hear why you're
Hi,
struggling.
Trenny. Nice to see you. Why am I struggling again?
Well, Jim is very upset
Yeah, I
because the NFL has threatened to eliminate the tush push.
I am upset about it.
Or, as Jim calls it, the tushy pushy.
I do call it that.
And
That's
anonymous texter, I want you to know that one of the reasons Jim is upset is he's afraid this might carry over to the office, where Jim stands in the doorway
pushes
and
people
gets
through.
Other people push him through. He gets the tushy.
Okay, fine.
He gets the tushy pushy.
Thank you very much.
Okay, just a
Well,
second.
you want a Super Bowl with the
And now
tush
we
push.
did.
Right.
Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, well, we're going to play a little sound, and then you're going to explain to us what the tushy pushy is and why
Tush
Jim
push,
should
thank
be
you.
upset. It's a montage of sports announcers commenting on the Eagles' iconic play. In this clip, they refer to it as the tush push, or the push, or the brotherly shove.
It's a long way to go on the tush push, but it doesn't matter. They still get it straight ahead. And here comes the Eagles' specialty, the push. Brotherly shove time. They shoves them in by 2 yards. Touchdown, Philadelphia.
Okay, what is the tush push, please, Trenny?
So, and I don't. It's the Packers. Every year, somebody tries to get this play banned from the NFL. This year, I'm sorry to tell you, it is my Green Bay Packers who have put it to the vote. I think it's silly. So, what the tush push is say, I'm Drake May. I'm the quarterback for the New England Patriots, and we have 1 yard to gain for a first down. So, and it's maybe even just inches. It's a quarterback sneak, but your offensive line helps push you over the line of scrimmage, which means your defensive line, you have to probably bring linebackers up and you have to hold the line. I don't understand. I guess people are saying like injuries or whatever, but I can't think of a time where there was a major injury because
from a tush
push, which is like a
It probably feels good, actually.
Yeah, it's like a slow motion play, like ooh, I think it's
a
silly.
gluteus maximus strain.
I honestly just think that teams are mad that they don't execute it.
Yeah, why don't they just do it exactly as the Eagles?
As the Eagles, like I just think it's sort of poor sportsmanship. Like, you do it better than us, and we haven't been able to figure it out, so let's ban it. Like, no, learn how to push teeny tiny Jordan Love's tush over the line.
Very nice.
And tush push it.
I want the strategy, though. I mean, if the guy's rear end is only so big, you can only have so many hands.
Depends on which guy we're talking about.
What you're trying to do
the
is
quarterback. Are you like four guys behind
sort of
him?
push the momentum, right?
Push the momentum.
You're supposed to like. I would, I guess my as I'm picturing it happening, your offensive linemen are lined up across from your defensive linemen, and probably maybe a linebacker or two, maybe even a safety, depending on how many guys they bring to the line. But that's much more complicated than we need to get on this show. You're keeping guys away from the quarterback or the running back, right? So you're just basically giving that player a little more momentum, and it doesn't always work.
No.
Josh Allen tried it, I think, 3 different times. Josh Allen and the Bills tried it in the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and everyone was like, stop doing this. You can't execute the play.
But it works almost every time for the Eagles.
It works almost every time for the Eagles.
How many people are pushing the tush? Is it 2 players, 3 players, 5 players?
I don't know,
You should know
I've never
this,
had
Jim.
my tush push.
Well, it depends what kind of mood you're in. You say, I would like 4 linemen doing the tush push.
Yeah.
Because I've had a tough day.
Right.
Or whatever it is.
It's
But you
probably-
just,
GBH, we need 6.
It's not like they're lining up single file like tug of war and everybody pushing them over.
It's not
You're
single
still,
file.
No, you're still
Okay.
in like
All right.
you're still in a formation.
Okay. We're in
I'm
a
so
line,
glad
one
you're on the
behind
right
the
side
other.
of this, but I'm really proud of you. I was afraid you're going to be on the Green Bay side.
I think
this matters to me a lot.
I think it's just
certainly does.
I think it's just kind of whiny.
Okay,
that
so can we,
they're
speaking
trying
of
to get it
getting rid of things, it has been, people may not know this, 49 years since the elder Steinbrenner, the famous one.
Oh, yeah.
His kid now runs the Yankees, but George obviously did in the heyday of the Yankees. Banned facial hair. And all of a sudden, his kid is saying it's okay as long as it's well kempt, that sort of thing. And I'm sure my father would be okay with this? Why are they doing this?
I think just because I think they were like, well, it was time. We reevaluated the rules. We looked at like the trends, yada, yada, yada. I think honestly, it's a changing generation and not a lot of teams have a lot of rules. And so I think you still can't have long hair if you're on the Yankees. You still can't have long hair. I just think it's them sort of recognizing that like the times have changed and maybe this is an antiquated rule.
And they may lose players who don't want to come there.
Players who don't want to, not that you want Justin Turner necessarily on your team now anyway because he's kind of a has-been.
Did he have a beard down there?
He had like that
like
long
a ZZ
red
Top thing?
beard. Yeah, he played for the Dodgers for a long time. But yeah, I mean, every little thing when you're talking about luring free agents and people to come play for your team matters. And when you have like, it's just sort of a silly rule, right? Like these are grown men who make tens of millions of dollars and you're like, you can't have a mustache? I mean, it's just kind of silly.
It's especially fun to see all the hairstyles on the NFL players and the NBA players. They got they all got all sorts of things going on.
Well, almost everybody has a beard. I mean, of different lengths. Almost every player in...
I mean, it's like a whole thing in hockey, right? You grow a playoff beard. Like, that's a thing in hockey. You don't shave it until you're knocked out of the Stanley Cup. It's very, very common in the NHL where you grow a playoff beard. Like, I don't know. It's just... to me, it's always been silly. I actually had forgotten that the Yankees had that stupid rule until they overturned it.
Well, two things. One, what was most interesting to me about it was it became a huge national story. It's not just a New York City story, a New York story.
Oh, no, it was everywhere.
Secondly, there was, I think it was the New York Times, The Athletic, where they talked to current and former Yankee players. What do you think of this? Every single one, except for one, it was random, supported what they're doing. You know who the one was?
I don't.
He used to have a beard when
Johnny
he played
Jamie?
for the Red Sox. He had to shave it when he went to the Yankees.
Really?
And he said they should have kept the policy.
Why? Probably because he's like, I had to do it, so everybody else should have to do it.
I don't know
like
what
people
he
who
said.
don't want them to turn over, like I had to pay my own way through college and I had student loans. And there are a lot of people of my generation who had to pay their way through college and are like, I had to pay my loans back. And it's like, no, just because we had to suffer, like there weren't flush toilets. You want to go back to where there were no flush toilets? Like just because something didn't exist before doesn't mean it can't exist now. Like,
by the way, Max from the Culture Show has this note. They did this, meaning the Yankees, after newly acquired players already shaved. And so is the point of that, Max, that they were pissed off? And as a result, whatever. But they got rid of the policy.
Well, then
49 years.
they'll have the 3 or 4 day beard, which always looks good.
Oh yeah, just a little
very
scrap.
sexy.
That's very sexy. We all can agree on that. Okay, so
it doesn't smell as bad as a full beard. Full beard always smells kind of bad.
Why? Because
Sorry,
there's food
Jamie.
in it? What does it mean? Like old
No,
food?
because I don't know. I mean, like when you go swimming, I just must have like flashbacks.
Chlorine.
I dated a guy for a long time who would like swim in lakes, and then he would go swim and he would do something and he'd come
Were there
back.
fish in there or something?
Well,
or what do you mean?
but it smells like a lake. Like have you ever swum in a lake?
Yeah, they sometimes
like when you get out of the
smell.
lake, you smell like a lake.
Did you ever smell Jamie's beard? Is that what you're saying, or you haven't? No, I'm just curious.
It's been a while since I've tried to get Jamie to make out with me, so no.
Okay, fine.
Poor Jamie.
Poor Jamie.
What's the deal? We may have an WNBA franchise.
How great
coming
would
to
that
Boston?
be?
I think it's Michael Williams Carter, former NBA player, and I believe it's Donnie Wahlberg. Am I getting the
it's
Wahlberg?
one of the Wahlbergs.
It's one
I'm
of the
not sure
Wahlbergs.
which
Am I getting the
one.
Wahlbergs right? They are part of a group that is trying to bring a WNBA team to Boston. This is on the heels of a very successful single game at the TD Garden last year. The Connecticut Sun sold out the Garden. It was a big hoopla. People have often wondered this is a basketball town. People love the Celtics. Why do we not have a WNBA team? Well, we don't because there's one in Connecticut. And it's essentially, I think, when the WNBA looks at expansion, they look at Connecticut at they're playing in Hartford, right? Is that where
Mohegan Sun.
Where's Mohegan
no,
Sun?
Where is it?
I think it is Mohegan Sun at Texas.
No, it is,
Mohegan
but where is
Sun.
it? It's not in Hartford. I don't know where Mohegan.
Wherever it is, I think it's sort of considered New England more so than than the New York side of Connecticut. And so I think they feel like you wouldn't be able to have both teams and have it like successful attendance and whatnot. And they put it in Connecticut because of the success of the University of Connecticut women's basketball team, which is one of the most successful and highest drawing.
Uncasville.
Yeah, but where is that? I mean,
I don't know.
Women's college basketball teams, it has been for decades, right? Like even when I was in college, UConn women, I remember covering a UConn women's game when I was in college, like a young reporter, and it was like Rebecca Lobo and everyone, and it was like a completely different style of game. However, they have mentioned, and Mohegan Sun and the Mohegan Tribe has made no indication that they want to sell the Sun. But I am curious if this group is putting something together because it's hard to get an expansion team. By January 30th, they already would have had to put in an application for an expansion team. I think they're expanding by 3 teams in 2026 and an additional 2 or 3 in 2028. So I think an expansion team might actually be the harder road for them to go, but they could lure maybe a team from a less successful market and buy that team and move that team to Boston.
Can we stay on the WNBA for a second? There's an interesting thing. I didn't even know they sold these things. The total pack of...
I think it's similar to the Phoenix Coyotes, the NHL team was terrible. And
I
so
understand
Winnipeg,
that. Right.
Yeah.
So if you buy the cards for every single player in the NBA, it costs you $800. If you buy the cards for, the cards.
The playing cards.
Playing cards. Well, not whatever they are, yeah. For every single player
Trading
in the
cards.
WNBA, it's 50% more money, which is really incredible, $1,200. However, you know what I'd totally forgotten? Since we talked about the horrible story of one particular WNBA player stuck in Russia for as long as she was.
Brianna Griner.
The average salary for these players continues
I know,
to be
but
atrocious.
Before you freak out about that, they are in the middle. Their CBA is up. So they are in right now, their collective bargaining agreement is up. So I am curious to see what these negotiations this offseason, because they are in their offseason right now, how I think they're either in their final year, going into their final year, or this is when the negotiations are happening. But in the next, I think, couple months to maybe year to year and a half, and I'm sorry that I can't remember exactly the timeline on this, but I think there could be a massive change in difference. But
as of today, people who are not Caitlin Clark, who's making tens of millions on the outside,
she's not, but
some of them make $75,000
a game. Yeah, I mean, you're not.
Some are making $75,000 a year.
Yes, a year. Sorry, not
it's
a game.
It's insane.
But I will say this, the other thing that I took away from the article, all of the articles about the expansion of the WNBA and people who are interested in buying teams, I think it speaks to the confidence that athletes have that this is going to continue to be a successful league that continues to grow. Like Jason Tatum wants to invest and bring a team to St. Louis.
I forgot about that.
Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, is trying to bring an expansion team to Kansas City. Those cities don't even have an NBA team. So these are smart Patrick Mahomes is $1 billion athlete. These are guys who feel like they're not just going to throw money around. Even if you're a billionaire, you want to make smart investments. They believe that to me is the most encouraging thing.
It's not just the Caitlin Clark phenomenon.
They believe in this product, and they believe it is a product worth investing in.
Well, I maybe go to a Celtics game a year, and I like them. They're really, really good.
They're great.
I would run to a WNBA game. And I think I'm
Honestly,
a good example.
The only reason it's sort of like I would probably go to more Revs games. Like when they move to Everett and it's a quick, ferry ride or, not a quick car ride because nothing's quick from the city to Everett. But if there's a fast way to get there, I'm much more likely to go see a game at the Garden or in Everett than I am to trek to Connecticut or get on 93 South. Like, no way.
So I read this story about this gambling story with this NBA player, fringe player, as they described in Jonte Porter. I was stunned. I didn't realize that you could conspire to throw a game.
Yeah, I mean,
in
it's
the
happened.
NBA.
It's happened before. It happened. I mean, it should be noted. This is, not. This is kind of a nobody player. This is a player that it's kind of funny to me that they conspired with him because I don't know how much Jonte Porter is going to change an NBA game.
I know.
They conspired with him to take himself out of the game as injured so that the minimal prop bets that were available to put on him, they would bet a lot of money and then they would win. But obviously the little ploy didn't work because they all got caught. They were taking pictures of each other, selfies, and it's all in evidence. I think the larger point of the story in ESPN is that gambling is growing so quickly and expanding so quickly in this country, and we don't yet have the guardrails to sort of rein it in. Some states, I think Massachusetts has done a better job than other states in putting, stronger guardrails, for lack of a better word, around what you can bet on, how you can place your bets, versus some places where I think it's the wild, wild west. Here, I really wanted to put some fun, Taylor Swift prop bets on the Super Bowl, or really off type things like color of the Gatorade. Massachusetts doesn't allow that stuff because I think in part because somebody, I'm going to put $5 on everything. The most I've ever bet in my life is $25. But there are people who will put a lot of money on that, and it then compounds and compounds and compounds, and you find yourself in trouble. I mean, they're finding that in states that have legalized gambling, there are more people getting divorced. There are more people like domestic violence. Like there are all these things because when you lose money, I mean, money is a big stressor in families, right?
Well, I also remember when some of the college kids complaining about how if they missed a foul shot, they were getting eviscerated.
Death
online.
threats.
Yeah.
Death threats.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, in fairness, this was happening before betting was available. Like people are just terrible. You know, like even before you could, now it's just compounded because again, people are losing money. If a kid makes a field goal, if a kid misses a field goal, if your coach decides to run out the clock instead of run up the score, people get mad because you bet the over, you bet the total number of points scored in a game. Like it does. There are things that there are bad things that happen when you legalize gambling, but it's not going to go anywhere. Like it's not leaving. It's people want it. There's money to be made off of it. They're just I'm not smart enough to know what you can do to sort of rein it in.
Well, I'll tell you what you shouldn't do, which we're about to
to
do. What's the name of the Ian Cost series that's right now, the podcast we had Ian on a few weeks ago with Dawn Hay? What's it called? Scratch and Win is about the history of lottery. I haven't listened to every episode, but one of the things, I don't know if he covers in this, is the state legalized, and Governor Healy told us she supported it, online lottery ticket purchases, which means you can sit on your couch like with sports and buy. Well, I think it's going to go. I think 2026. I'm not sure. It's legal already. They just haven't implemented all the logistics. Another opportunity to sit on your couch and lose money that you can't afford to lose.
Well, and what they say is, by and large, the people who buy lottery tickets, the people who bet on sports, are not
Robin Hood in reverse.
Yes, it's not people who have.
Yep.
I know plenty of people who have plenty of money that if they, I know people who lose $1,000 and they're like, oh, I'll get it back, it's fine. But there are many people who cannot afford, and then you try to do it more to get it back.
That's what gambling is all about. Yeah. And by the way, it wouldn't exist if people didn't lose. There wouldn't be money for local aid and for the state and whatever.
Right.
We only have a minute left. They're trying out robot umpires.
Robot umpires, I love this.
I'm super into this.
Here's the thing, we only have a minute, unfortunately. What I understand is you're allowed, as part of the rules, to challenge. Do you challenge to a human being or do you challenge to a machine?
So you challenge to a human being because there's still going to be, at least for the time being. So this is in baseball, right? They are testing out. They've been doing this in the minor leagues now. Only in spring training this year, they're testing out this automated umpire system in spring training games. And baseball players are notorious for hating any kind of change. Baseball players love this.
Why?
Because it's more accurate and it's more consistent. So the human element of the game means like your strike zone with an ump, and I thought this article did a good job of explaining it, is sort of like an oval. So you could maybe be a little off the plate, or an umpire could say, I didn't give you that call, but I'm going to give you this one because it was right on the line, right? Like I'm going to kind of make up for my bad call. Well, now you have it. It's just a square. It's like where the strike zone should be, from like, mid chest down to like upper thighs, like right above your knees. Like that's the strike zone. So you get, I think, 2 to 3 challenges a game. They say a pitcher, a catcher, or a hitter can challenge, but that a pitcher can't see well enough anyway. And you can't look. Like you have to do it immediately.
You have 20 seconds.
You can't look at your manager and say, oh, should I challenge it? You have to challenge it. And so there is an element of gamesmanship of don't be a baby and challenge something that you shouldn't challenge because it can hurt your team in the long run. I think it's kind of, we're going in the way of automation for everything.
I like the human part.
Okay, we've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a Boston Public Radio contributor. We're supposed to be talking to Charlie Sennett from the Ground Truth Project today about what's going on in Israel and what's going on in Germany, but he couldn't make it last minute. So after the noon news, we're going to hear from comedian Adam Conover explaining the importance of federal government workers. He's a comedian. He's going to try to make this funny about what's happening to them right now. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Show One Productions with Robert LePage's new theatrical dance production, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. Audiences can experience this revolutionary ballet at the Emerson Cutler Majestic Theater, February 28th and March 1st. emersontheaters.org. On the next American Experience, explore the life and work of Walter White, one of the most influential but least known civil rights figures. Watch Forgotten Hero, Walter White and the NAACP, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The Trump administration continues to send mixed signals to federal government workers about what to do with an email telling them to describe their work last week. As NPR's Hansi-Lo Wong reports, the deadline to respond passed last night.
The Office of Personnel Management sent a government-wide email on Saturday asking federal employees to submit 5 things they did last week. The latest guidance from OPM says agencies should, quote, review responses and evaluate non-responses, and agency leaders can decide to exclude workers from this activity and whether to take any appropriate actions if any employees don't participate. President Trump and Elon Musk have claimed workers who don't respond were at risk of losing their jobs. Civil service protections are in place to prevent many federal employees from being fired without cause. In a lawsuit, labor unions and other groups argue OPM has no authority to manage federal employees outside of the agency. They've asked the judge to temporarily block the administration from asking for responses to OPM's email. Hansi-Lo Wong, NPR News, Washington.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is visiting the U.S. Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba today. It's his first trip there since joining the Trump administration. NPR's Sasha Pfeiffer has more.
The Pentagon says while at Guantanamo, Hegseth will be briefed on operations at the base, including at the detention facility and prison complex, where the administration has been holding migrants deported from the United States. The Defense Department says Hegseth will also meet with service members at the base and aboard the USS Thomas Hudner naval destroyer. Back in 2004, Hegseth served at Guantanamo for about a year when he was a member of the Minnesota Army National Guard. Now he'll be the second senior Trump administration official to visit Guantanamo this month. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem traveled there a few weeks ago. Sasha Pfeiffer, NPR News.
Ahead of his meeting with President Trump this week, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is increasing the UK's military spending to 2.5% of gross domestic product by 2027. Starmer says the UK has to stand by Ukraine or face increasing threats to its security and economy.
As the nature of that conflict changes, as it has in recent weeks, it brings our response into sharper focus.
He says Britain would pay for it by scaling back on development. Trump has long called on European allies to contribute more to Europe's defense. Consumer confidence tumbled this month in the biggest monthly decline in years over concerns about a slowing economy and rising inflation. The Conference Board says its consumer confidence index dropped 7 points. That's the biggest decline since August of 2021, as people worry about rising prices, trade, and tariffs. It's the second major gauge of consumer confidence, showing consumers are feeling much more pessimistic about the economy. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. The Harvard... wrong newscast. Hold on. Here we go. Boston mayoral candidate Josh Kraft raised just over $71,000 from more than 100 donors in the first days of his campaign. According to information from the state campaign finance office, the bulk of Kraft's money is coming from family members, financial executives, as well as real estate developers. Data shows that Kraft received the maximum contribution of $1,000 from several family members, including his dad, New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. A massive house in Wellfleet perched on an eroding bluff is no more. Yesterday, demolition crews leveled the house, which has been at the center of years-long controversy. Eve Zuckoff from our sister station in Woods Hole, WCAI, was there to watch it come down.
Some of the last walls of the so-called Blash House were torn down by an excavator around 2 p.m. The 5,000-square-foot home sat atop a bluff that's eroded by more than 50 feet in the last decade. Coastal Processes specialist Brian McCormack estimated that the house would have fallen into Cape Cod Bay within 3 years, if not sooner.
Having it come down today is better than Mother Nature taking it in a week, in a month, in a year.
As excavators chewed down on the house and put it into dumpsters, one of the last recognizable areas was a great room with wooden beams and a ceiling fan blowing in the breeze. In Wellfleet, for CAI, I'm Eve Zuckoff.
50 degrees in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, committed to giving job listings increased visibility with relevant candidates through its sponsored jobs feature. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Congressman Bill Keating zooms into the show at 12:30. We're going to talk to him, of course, about federal workers, Russia, what's going on with Ukraine. Tomorrow at the Boston Public Library, Diana DiZoglio, the state auditor, is going to join us for the first edition of Ask the Auditor at 1 o'clock. She'll take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. We were scheduled to be joined by our colleague, the founder and editor of the Ground Truth Project, Charlie Sennett. He's come down with something. Our apologies to you all, people here at the library and listeners and that sort of thing. Instead, we will play our conversation we had last week with a guy who calls himself an investigative comedian, Adam Conover. Adam will be performing in Vermont next week, and for more information about that, go to adamconover.net. Here with us now via Zoom is Adam Conover. You know him as the host of Adam Ruins Everything on True TV, or the guy behind the Michelle and Barack Obama produced Netflix series The G Word, about the inner workings of our government, good and bad. And also he's someone who, like Marjorie and me, I would argue, can appreciate the overlooked aspects of everyday life where attention spans allow, at least. Here's a clip from his latest stand-up special, Unmedicated.
It's amazing what you notice if you actually pay attention to the world around you. You know, but it's hard. It's hard to pay attention, isn't it? Like, has this happened to you guys in the last couple of years? Has your attention span like shrunk down to a tiny little peanut? I can't focus on anything anymore. Like at the end of a long day of Zoom meetings, my girlfriend will be like, "Hey, why don't we just chill out and watch a movie tonight?" And I'm like, 119 minutes? Could we take a break halfway through to watch TikToks?
Exactly. These days, you can catch his commentary on politics, culture, and everything in between at his Adam Conover YouTube page or his podcast, Factually with Adam Conover. Adam, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I won't correct your pronunciation. It was perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So great to talk to you again. But give people a little bit of a hint. So what if they can get tickets to the show Sunday night at the Wilbur Theater? What are they going to see?
You know, it's my new hour of stand-up comedy. I just had a special come out last year on Dropout that I was very proud of. The reason this is the Nihilism Pivot Tour is, you know, I spent the last 10 years of my career trying to make the world a better place through comedy. Trying to talk about the problems of the world, how we can fix them. And I've kind of concluded, you know what, the world seems to be getting worse no matter what I say about it on a comedy stage. And now I'm just trying to have fun on stage. I'm talking about dating. I'm talking about sex. I'm still talking about politics. But I don't know. We've all the second Trump term has put me in a different frame of mind, as have a lot of people, and my comedy is changing as a result.
You did something on YouTube called Secret Reasons the Democrats Keep Losing. What are those secret reasons there, Adam?
I mean, the short version is that the Democratic Party continues to be run as a top-down organization where these people in Washington try to figure out what the public wants. Parties in America used to be bottom-up organizations. Your local Democratic Party used to be something that you would show up to and participate in on a daily basis. That still exists, but only in a very small degree. Your local Democratic club maybe has a dozen members or so. We also used to have other organizations like unions, community groups, churches that were affiliated with the different parties, and all of those have fallen away. So, we used to organize ourselves into these local community groups, and that was where political power really was. And that way, the input of individual people would filter up, and the party would know what to do because its members were telling it what they wanted to do.
You got any ideas of some of those down on the ground stars? I heard that guy that beat Carrie Lake, Gallegos, whatever his name is. He's a Latino guy out from Arizona.
Yep.
He's got a different take on things, mostly about why so many young men turned away from Harris. And it's not about her being a woman or her being a biracial woman, although or Indian black woman. It was about our failure to court young men in the right way. What do you think?
Young men in America, if you look at the demographic trends, education, occupation, the unemployment rate for young men, very, very bad picture in this country. And it's not something that we've paid a lot of attention to on a policy level, or that the liberals or the left have really messaged towards, and I think that's a failure. And I think that Donald Trump used the very childish version of masculinity he was able to. I mean, look, he had Hulk Hogan on stage. That's literally a children's entertainer, right? Yeah. Saying, this is what it is to be a man, brothers, right? That filled a gap that was not filled by the left, and I think that's a real problem that the Democrats are going to have to address in the future. I mean, it goes. But by the way, I also talk about how you've also seen these billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg have their masculine glow-ups where they're they've gotten really ripped and they're wearing like men's jewelry and they're going on Rogan now. And it's part of this fragile masculinity we have in our culture where men feel that their masculinity is always under attack and then double down with these ever more stereotypically masculine gestures. Part of that is a problem with the concept of masculinity in our culture, but part of it is also that men literally are, facing an economic crisis that, our culture is not addressing, our politicians are not addressing.
Speaking of billionaires, a couple of weeks before the election, if I recall correctly, you trashed, again on YouTube, Elon Musk. Whatever happened to him, by the way? What's he doing? Really, where is he?
My trashing was so thorough, he just went back to South Africa in shame.
Yeah, but I think this masculinity stuff, though, might have to do with why one of his little proteges that's running around getting everybody's records from
Big
the
Balls.
IRS is exactly the 19-year-old. He chose Big Balls for his screen name, so maybe
I like it.
That's all hooked into all this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the way that nerd culture has become sort of weirdly hyper-masculine, right? In this overcompensating, insecure, kind of pathetic way, right? Like look at Mark and look at Elon, right? These guys came from, the nerd culture, the Bill Gates, Silicon Valley culture, but now they're feeling that they have to overcompensate. And I make fun of them a lot because it's sort of sad and pathetic to watch a guy try this hard, to put some truck nuts on a Cybertruck. It's, like the Cybertruck itself is such an embarrassing spectacle to see driven around, but it speaks to a deeper crisis of masculinity that these guys don't even have really the cognitive wherewithal to address or understand. They're the victims of it, even though they're billionaires. It makes it even sadder.
I assume most people listening are familiar with Adam, your show, Adam Ruins Everything. But there's a new show that is, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, much more popular. It's called Trump Ruins Everything. And one of the things that Marjorie says on the air regularly, with which I agree, and you did a whole show series about, is that part of the reason why people are not more up in arms is because the average American has no idea what the federal government does. And that was essentially the subject. It would sound like it was dull. I thought it was scintillating and fabulous. Tell us both about what you attempted to do with the G word, and please tell us what it was like working with the Obamas, who were the producers of this thing.
Well, look, that was a really wonderful show to be able to work on. That was my second TV show we did for Netflix. We made it over the pandemic, so it took 3 years to make. It was a real labor of love. And it also spanned the Trump to the Biden administration. But it was a really wonderful experience. I mean, I got to travel the country and see what the federal government does. I went up with NOAA's hurricane hunters. We flew through a hurricane.
Tell us about that. I've always wondered what that was like, and you talked about it.
It was incredible. So a lot of people don't realize every time a hurricane is coming towards the country and you turn on the Weather Channel and they say, here's where the hurricane is and here's where it's going, right?
Right.
The only reason they have that data is because every time there's a hurricane there, a NOAA hurricane hunter plane or an Air Force hurricane hunter plane is flying through the hurricane over and over again. They fly through one end, out the other. They turn around, they do it again a dozen times. Then they go land, another plane does the same thing. They do that because that's the only way to find the true center of the hurricane and measure the wind speeds. And I went up with one of these planes, and it's incredible. I mean, it's a military plane, but it's got science officers, it's got no obviously weapons on it, and you fly through. It's incredibly intense turbulence, right? It's you're shaking, and there's not seats to strap yourself. I mean, there's jump seats, but you're holding on for dear life. And then you break through the wall of the hurricane into the eye, and it is the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen because suddenly the sky is clear. You can see this on the show. The sky is clear, and the sun is streaming down, and in front of you is this wall of clouds, right? Because you're looking at the opposite eye wall. And I get goosebumps even just describing it to you now. It is beautiful. And it's also terrifying, right? These people do this over and over again. And I talk to them. Why do these pilots do it? It's because they're civil servants. They care. They actually care about, we want to protect life and property. Some of them said, one said, I grew up in Florida and, my family had hurricane damage. Our lives were threatened. Now I get to protect people's lives. And I think what is missed, Elon and Doge, God help us for even having to say the name of that department, are missing is that the majority of people who work for the government are dedicated civil servants who could be making more money in the private sector, but they actually give a crap about the public and about the mission of the government. And it's a shame, to read these testimonials from these people who said, I just want to work for this Forest Service and protect our nation's forests, and now I don't get to. They think I'm a waste. How insulting, and I think how ultimately self-destructive to the country, and to their own party. I think it's going to really redound against them horribly to treat so many dedicated Americans in such a shameful fashion.
Well, you know what else I didn't know? I figured that GPS came to us from, Big Balls Sr., who had the child, Big Balls Jr., but apparently that was a government creation, GPS?
Yes. I mean, the GPS is the result of, 50 years of research by multiple, departments in the government, the military, NOAA, et cetera, the refinement of satellite technology. It was done for the battlefield initially, but the GPS constellation is, a constellation of satellites.
Yeah.
It is provided to the entire world by the federal government as a public service. Our federal government provides the GPS to literally every GPS receiver on the planet, no matter what country you're in. And by the way, it's free to do so. It doesn't cost more money to extend it to more people. They just opened the protocol because it's like a lighthouse, right? A lighthouse a government might erect, but it benefits everyone in the ocean, right? And that is what the GPS service is. And GPS is one of the most, transformative technologies in my entire life. And I owe it to the government. And on the show, I went to the little room in the what is now Space Force Base, and met the dozen, 18, 20 people who work for the federal government who monitor the GPS constellation every day. And it's like, 19, 20-year-olds who are working for the government and are trained to do so. And this is what you use to get to work. Half the people listening to this probably right now are using GPS at this moment, right? In their cars.
I still want you to tell us about what it was like working with the Obamas, particularly when you did something they didn't like on drones and stuff. But I see you went to Shoreham Wading River High School. What Marjorie wanted to know is, did any of your friends in high school go by the nickname Big Balls?
Okay.
Or was that?
Okay.
I'm just curious.
We can't.
Did you encounter that at all?
Let me just say something. Big Balls was my nickname on the internet. I've had that username for many years.
Exactly.
I play video games under that, and this guy took it from me, and I want everyone to know I'm the original Big Balls. Okay?
Beautiful. Okay, so you had to meet with Barack Obama, I assume.
Yes.
You
They had
did,
a
right?
peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
What was that like?
Peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Not only what was that like in general, but what was it like when I assume you had to talk to him about things he didn't like this drone deal. What was that like?
Well, so look, this show, the reason the show came about was the Obamas read the Michael Lewis book, The Fifth Risk,
Great
which is
book.
about the federal government.
You interviewed
I
him
had read
about
that book
it,
as well. They wanted someone to make a show based on it, and I pitched my take, right? And we decided to work on it together. But I knew that, the show would not be credible if we were, never critical of the government or never critical of the Obama administration. And so I knew that we would have to go in and do some topics like that. And one of the things that had distressed me the most about the federal government was drone strikes on, civilian populations in the Middle East. There are many, many horrible stories. And we told that story in the midst of, we did an episode about technology, how the government created so much of the technology that is in our phones, in our pockets every day, but also some technology that we would rather not have, like Agent Orange, and like, honestly, drone strikes. I think drones are a really frightening military development, and I don't agree with the way that they've been used. And we did a segment that was very critical of those. And I'll be honest, that was it was a push to get it through, right? Because we were working with the Obama's political organization. But ultimately, they respected the fact that I'm a comedian. I have to have my take, and that it has to be separate from theirs, and that was necessary for the show's credibility. And there's a lot of conversations, but we did a segment there that I'm very, very proud of. And we did an opening interview with the former president where we joshed and had a little fun. We later had a really substantive conversation on the show where I pressed him on, hey, you ran on hope and change, and not as many things changed as we thought they would, right? A lot of people were disappointed, and why is that? And he was willing to entertain that conversation. So I think it's a credit to him and to Netflix that we were able to have, really do a wide range of topics on the show and get into some dicey stuff, because that's how comedy and documentary has to be. I do think that's, I think that's important, right? If I hadn't been able to do that, I wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. And they knew that from the get-go, and that's why we were able to do those segments.
Adam Conover, remind me, either on our radio show or on my old television show, I had Michael Lewis on when The Fifth Risk came out, and it sounds like a topic that you would fall asleep reading the book. It's basically how the people who run government often have no idea how government works.
Yeah.
I remember, correct me if I'm wrong about this, one of the most startling stories in that is Michael writes about how ordinarily the cabinet leaders, secretaries, whatever, prepare these issue books and how-to books for their successors. No, it doesn't matter what party it is. And I think and they're voluminous, and every little detail. And I believe he wrote that when the Obama people prepared them, as is always done for the Trump people, they hadn't even cracked the book about how to learn to do the job at the age. I'm right about that, am I not?
I believe so. And I would have to imagine that, that was the first administration. This time, they probably are reading the book, but they're using it as a manual for what to destroy, right? For what to get rid of. The motto of the new Trump administration seems to be anything good we want gone, right? Anything bad we want more of. Anything good, like there's a lot of bad in the government. They seem to only want the bad and none of the good. And it's proud weaponized ignorance, and it's really, really distressing to see. And I think that's the part when you really start to wonder why are not more people in Washington pushing back. It makes you think, well, I thought at least parts of the Republican Party were in favor of competence and things being done in a mindful, I don't know, just a good way, right? Like, you take your car to the mechanic, you want it to get fixed, you don't want it replaced with a chicken, right? And I think that seems to be the opposite of how the Trump administration runs. It seems to be weaponized ignorance that they're proud of. It's really distressing.
Well, you talked to Jamel Bowie. He's if I pronounced that correctly, he's a columnist for the New York Times, in a piece called "How Trump Will Transform America Forever," and the "forever" part really upset me because I was hoping that this was not going to be forever. So, what did you talk about with him?
Well, Jamel is like such a brilliant commentator. I had him on a few days after the election, so it was a very raw conversation about our feelings. But you know, it was possible to look at the first Trump administration as a blip. I don't think it's possible to look at the second one that way. I think it's a regime change in Washington. I think when you look at presidents who sort of transformed the way that our government in Washington operates, you know, FDR, Reagan, and the next one is Trump, I believe. Like the country is taking a right-wing, racist, segregationist, fascist turn that's going to be with us for a while. And, you know, it's going to be possible to push back against it, but it is, you know, the turn is happening. It is not a blip. It's not something that the system is metabolizing against. It's happening, right? And the amount of backlash to the rights movements, the civil rights movements, the disability rights movement, the gay rights movement is so palpable and clear. I mean, they're trying to reintroduce segregation into the federal government. They're trying to remove gay people from public life again. It really is dominating the culture now. You know, our culture is changing as a result of this regime change in a really palpable way. I think we can all feel it.
He's only going to be here 9 or 10 more years. I mean, you just wait and it's going to be over. So, Adam, we occasionally get criticized by our listeners for laughing at some of this stuff. And I know I speak for Marjorie saying the old line, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry.
Exactly.
And it also, I believe it lengthens your life because otherwise you just be in a ball under whatever. Does doing what you do for a living, both investigating all this stuff, but also being funny about a lot of it, doesn't it? It helps you live, doesn't it? Really? I mean, in addition to entertaining people? I didn't articulate that well, but you know what I mean.
It does. I mean, laughing is, as you said, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, right? And I think it's possible to laugh in a way that does justice to the seriousness of a situation. That's what I've always done in my work. I mean, we've done so many topics about death and disease and racism and, you know, hatred. And we write jokes about them and we laugh, and the joke does not minimize. The joke is about how awful it is, right? And it helps you appreciate it. Like there's a laugh that says this is really screwed up and we're really screwed, aren't we? But you know, all we can do is laugh. Now, I think that the mistake that we have made is a lot of the time is thinking that laughter is enough, that all we have to do is make fun of how stupid and how ugly and how misguided these people are. And then the country will see the light, right? That was the sort of, that was the Jon Stewart approach. Jon Stewart is one of my idols comedically. But, you know, making fun of, oh man, Marjorie Taylor Greene sure is a kook, right? Well, it doesn't matter how many times you say that, she's still running the country. So I think we need to, you know, return to looking at comedy as a relief valve. That's what my new tour is about. You know, me trying to return to comedy as, hey, we're up here to have some fun. I'm talking about what I care about, what I think about. I'm trying to connect with the audience. Let's have some relief tonight. Let's talk about politics and laugh about it, but then let's go and take actual political action, right? Let's laugh to relieve ourselves, and then let's go get out there to the school board meeting, the city council meeting, to the local party meeting that we want to go to, and actually try to change the world, right? Because laughter is powerful, laughter is important. It's just not enough to make the world a better place by itself. That's my own realization.
You don't think tweeting is enough? Tweeting your from your lying in bed in your underwear? What?
It is a scam that has been perpetrated to us as on the public, that we have been taught that posting is anything, that posting on social media does anything, that scrolling, that I know so many people who their activism is they open up Instagram and they go add to story, add to story, add to story. And then they got 50, here's my Gaza story, here's my Trump story, here's my whatever story, right? And like, who's looking at your stories, man? These people already agree with you, you know? Like, this is not doing anything. We have to get out on the streets. We have to get out in public. We have to be with each other to create actual political change. Make your post, drink your coffee, and then leave your house and write something on a sign and go stand on a street corner. Like, go to a meeting. Find an organization that you can be a member of and that you can have a vote in, your local League of Women Voters chapter, your local DSA chapter, your local Democratic Club chapter, right? Whatever it is. And go do it in person and then go post, hey, you know what I did today? Here's me and my 5 friends in real life. We had an actual meeting. Life. Our political culture has taught us all we can do is donate, vote, and post. And that is only the beginning of your capabilities as a political actor. You have to get out there and actually change the world. And, you know, I've learned that in my union work. I do a lot of work with the Writers Guild of America. I'm on our board. I was very active in our strike. I saw that if average people get together and figure out what our power is and use it, we can actually force the powers that be to change. And we didn't do it by posting, we didn't do it by begging or pleading or voting or donating. We did it by withholding our labor and taking actual action. And all of us have that power somewhere in our lives. We got to figure out where it is and make use of it. I'll get off my soapbox, but I'm thanks for the opportunity.
Get back on your soapbox. It's great to see you, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was our conversation last week with comedian Adam Conover. He'll be performing in Vermont next week. If you want to get more information, you go to adamconover.net. adamconover.net. That's CONOVER.net. Apologize for getting that name wrong. Up next, after a quick break, Congressman Bill Keating is zooming in from D.C. to talk about America's new policy of appeasing Russia as Donald Trump reopens the lines of communication with Vladimir Putin and refers to Ukrainian President Zelensky as a dictator and blames Ukraine for starting this horrible war between them and Russia. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Today, Americans spend $100 billion each year on lottery tickets. But it wasn't always this way.
The games were slow, they were expensive, the prizes were small.
So how do we get from that to this?
Lotto fever! Show us your lotto tickets!
I'm Ian Koss, host of Scratch and Win, a new podcast about how Massachusetts inadvertently sparked a gambling revolution. Listen to Scratch and Win wherever you get podcasts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Celebrity Series, presenting Kodo live at Symphony Hall on March 9th with a thunderous performance celebrating the centuries-old Japanese tradition of taiko drumming. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
3 years into Russia's war in Ukraine, President Trump says he's hopeful an end could be weeks away. Don't count on it, says Alexander Vindman.
Russia is not going to be satisfied with the level of appeasement that the Trump administration is offering because the Ukrainians are not willing to capitulate.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, the retired lieutenant colonel and former Trump staffer on Russia, Ukraine, and his new book, On All Things Considered, from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio.
I was supposed to say that, wasn't I?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I'm off my game.
It's okay.
What can I
It's
tell
all right.
you?
It's okay.
As Marjorie was saying, welcome back to Boston Public Radio. She is Marjorie Egan. I'm Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now on Zoom by United States Representative Bill Keating. Representative Keating represents the Massachusetts 9th District as a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the ranking Democrat on the European Subcommittee. Last year, he traveled to Ukraine, met with President Zelensky, carrying a message of support, an actual vote tally from Congress, from the House, from the administration and the Congress. That, of course, was a different president and a different Republican majority, which now does whatever Donald Trump tells them to. Here's an interesting exchange yesterday in the Oval Office between Trump and a reporter with the president of France sitting next to him.
If you call Zelensky a dictator, would you use the same words regarding Putin?
I don't use those words lightly. I think that we're going to see how it all works out. Let's see what happens. I think we have a chance of a really good settlement between various countries. And, you know, you're talking about Europe and you're talking about Ukraine as part of that whole situation. The other side has a lot of support also.
I have no idea what he's talking about. By the way, if you didn't hear the first question from the reporter, he said you called Zelensky a dictator. Will you use those same words for Putin? Also, I assume you know, yesterday at the UN, the United States joined with Russia, North Korea, Iran, and 14 other Putin-friendly countries to vote against the resolution condemning Russian aggression in Ukraine. You heard me right. Congressman Keating, thank you so much for joining us.
Jim, Marjorie, great to be with you again.
Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Congressman. So, you're a baby boomer like Jim and I are. I never thought I would live to see the United States, my country, side with Russia and North Korea in a vote at the UN over our longtime allies in Europe, but that's what just happened. What do you make of it?
Marjorie, my North Star in public service has been probably the person in my family that sacrificed the most. My uncle was killed in action. He received posthumously the Silver Star in France after a person being wounded, pulling a person back, giving cover. They survived. He went out to get another person under his command, and he was shot to death. They sacrificed, along with 400,000 other Americans who lost their lives, to get us to the point we are now, Marjorie. You're right. Our generation is the first beneficiary of the greatest generation that sacrificed and put us in a position where for 80 years, we have had the most peaceful and prosperous decades in the history of civilization. And that's not hyperbole. That's backed up with facts.
Before we get to whether or not you think a deal is imminent and whether or not you think the deal is a fair one that's being pitched by Donald Trump, Congressman, obviously you speak as your position on this Europe subcommittee as a leader there with a lot of your colleagues. Let me play what the likely next German chancellor, based on the elections the other day, said on a television program a few days ago in a clip translated from German English. This is Friedrich Merz.
And for me, the absolute priority will be to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so that we step by step also truly achieve independence from the USA. I would not have believed that I would have to say something like this on a TV program. But at the latest, after last week's statements by Donald Trump, it's clear that the Americans, at least this part of the American government, are largely indifferent to Europe's fate.
Are largely indifferent to Europe's fate. Is he right, Congressman?
I think he was really being qualified. In Germany itself, with these elections, the vice president and Elon Musk both involved themselves with the support publicly of what's been categorized as a neo-Nazi far-right extreme party that only received 20% of the vote, by the way. He could have gone further. We're more than indifferent. We're siding with the bad guys. We're siding with Russia. We're siding with totalitarian and authoritarian dictators. Look who voted with us in the United Nations yesterday. It was shameful. Russia, China, North Korea, Belarus. These are people that don't believe in democracy. And the U.S. couldn't even vote in favor of their own resolution when our allies, who fought side by side with us, merely put in language saying that Putin was responsible for the aggression.
Well, obviously the party in Germany that has been most friendly or sympathetic to the Nazis, let's face it, they did much better than they expected to do. So there's this rising attraction to authoritarianism there as well.
Well, that's what you'll find out, and I found out in my position. Frankly, I'm having private conversations with foreign ministers, ambassadors, more than people probably in Massachusetts ever know. And these private conversations over many years now, I've gained their trust. They tell me the truth. This is something that they're battling in their own countries. They're facing greater inflation. They're facing greater migration issues than we are. They're holding the line. And all the time, the leadership of the United States of America, we're the beacon of liberty they all look to. And you know what? I wish some of the people listening, some of the people in America could take time and would have the privilege of sitting through the private conversations I have. If it wasn't for our country, they wouldn't be making the progress that they're being made. They look up to this country, or they looked up to this country with the greatest admiration and pride, and they use it as an example so they can move their countries forward. And this is all lost. Frankly, it's not a conversation today isn't a conversation of what will happen. This has already happened. They will not trust the United States the same way they have maybe even a month ago after what has happened by the Trump leadership, our actions are undercutting their ability to stand up for democracy and siding with the worst dictators. Now, I had 3 war criminal hearings when I chaired the committee. There's been over 120,000 documented with iPhones now, war crimes in Ukraine. You're talking serial rapes. I want people to know this. Serial rapes of teenagers by Russian soldiers starting in the morning to the evening in front of their parents and grandparents to cleanse their blood. I'm talking about mass murderers. I'm talking about the abduction of over 20,000 little infants who now only know Russian parents, who never know their own parents. These are war crimes. We sided with this side against the rest of the free world.
Well, Congressman Keating, let me bring up something that 2 of our listeners brought up today. We have a president who says Ukraine started the war, which they did not, that says the president of Ukraine is a dictator, but won't say that Putin is, that says the country that was invaded, not the invader, should reimburse the United States, and to add to your list, a leader that's willing to overlook whatever that number was, horrifying number you just mentioned, of war crimes by this side he is siding with. Is it too harsh to say that it's possible the President of the United States is a Russian asset, Congressman?
No, it's the truth. Is he a knowing Russian asset? I would hope not. Is he an asset for them? Absolutely. He's around telling people only I could bring people to the table. Well, that's easy to do when you're siding with the enemy, and this is what he's doing. So he is, whether it's willfully, unknowingly, but it's clear he is absolutely helping Putin. Putin wasn't ready to go to the table before, but during this calendar year, without divulging too much, the Russian economy and the impact on Russia was going to be so onerous that we felt that he would be forced to the table. Donald Trump has given him a free pass right now. And meanwhile, he's continuing to bomb civilian targets. He's continuing an onslaught of drones and ballistic missiles while these discussions are taking place. And meanwhile, we are calling someone that was duly elected, democratically elected, a dictator, and taking someone that's had over 2 decades of sham elections where he's killed his opponents or jailed them and used tactics like this in other countries siding with him around the world. And he has, make no mistake about it, he has the Baltic countries, he has countries like Poland and Moldova in his sights. He said so. We're a day after 3 years of the second invasion of Ukraine. And 10 days before that, the United States government received communications where Putin made it clear he wanted half of NATO demilitarized. He had demand after demand, essentially to move back to the old Soviet Union. Those are his goals. And that's why the leaders in these other countries have been coming to the U.S. And saying, we're members of NATO, you have to stand with us. And NATO itself is under the greatest jeopardy right now with the actions of the United States.
It's one of the most painful things as somebody who I like to think has been as supportive as I can be of Ukraine's fight to protect their democracy, is to see an incredibly courageous person like Zelensky, with whom you've met, have to basically be respectful to a man who has been totally disrespectful to him, Donald Trump, and the hope that peace can be brought. Are you of the opinion that we have an outline of a possible deal which would require, apparently, Ukraine to give up some percentage of their rare minerals to the United States, possibly to have Zelensky himself resign? He offered to do it in exchange for NATO membership, which is unlikely to happen. Is a deal in the offing, and what do you think of it if it is?
And what about the 20,000 children?
Right, that are Russia, yeah. How about it, Representative? We lost the sound. You're muted, Congressman.
Yeah.
If somebody can.
I'm not muted.
There, you're back.
There
You're
you're
back.
back.
You're back.
Okay.
What do you think?
When I met Zelensky several months ago in Ukraine, he talked about those children, and there was a real fear. They know no parents. They don't know their parents anymore, just to underscore what's going on there. And before I lose the very important point you made, Jim, that Zelensky is a democratic leader. He's a hero. When we met with him, he was just coming back from the front line where he was endangering his life, and he's there all the time. He's trying to reform a corrupt government, which in and by itself would be an enormous task, and he's succeeding along those lines. He's had easily over 20 assassination attempts on his life. He had a plot that was discovered as we were getting there, and weeks later, another plot was discovered to take his life. He's a family man. He has children, a wife. He's sacrificed so much. In the meantime, he has to go all over the world begging for support to stand up to democracies. There was a plan to bring him to the table always. This war was always going to end in negotiations. The point was, we had to bring Putin to a point where he had to come to the table and understand he had to make concessions. That has been completely undercut. So where are we? Well, with the U.S. acting the way they are, I think it's forced Zelensky to come to the table more. But Trump is sitting there negotiating and coercing Zelensky. He can't name one thing. I know he was asked, I think at the same press conference, what concessions have you got? What have you talked about with Russia? The answer is zero. Zero. He's beating up and shaking down this leader who's an ally to come to some kind of resolution. So I think, and I hope there'll be discussions. We always want peace. But thank God for our European allies who are saying, we're not going to accept any peace unless there's guarantees, military guarantees. Putin's word means nothing. As a matter of fact, since 1994, Russia, and for that matter, the United States, have had an agreement and a pledge to defend Ukraine against aggression when they gave up their nuclear weapons. They were the third leading nuclear power in the world. They gave it up with the promise that if they were invaded, if there was aggression against them, that we would defend them. And Russia gave the same promise. Putin's promise alone can't be the end of this negotiation. So they can talk, but without guarantees, and that means military backed up guarantees that if Putin moves forward again, that we'll be there, then it means nothing.
You know, Congressman, before we move on from this, I got a text earlier from Deborah, who says she lives in the Cape, which is your district. She's housing a young Ukrainian refugee family. She's concerned that come April, I think it's been extended, April, it's for October now to the October 2026, but she's worried that their TPS status will expire and ICE will show up at our door. I forwarded her phone number, our staff has, to your office. But what about that? Are Ukrainians going to be sent back?
Well, my Republican colleagues were urging, as I was trying to lead the effort, to take these, you might remember these people that are trying to avoid wars. I met with them in Europe. I met with them here. I hope not. I'm worried about all the TPS. By the way, for the listeners here, that means temporary protective status. These are people that are fleeing their countries because they're in danger of being killed. And that's happening in Haiti, and it's happening in Venezuela, and it's happening in Ukraine. And none of those people should be sent back to their death or to jailing. They were here legally. They were invited here. So hopefully we'll follow up with the individual you mentioned. But people have to remember what's going on. You should see, yesterday at that same press conference, Donald Trump was making up, he let's call it the MSU answers to his policy. For the sake of the show, I'll call it saying making stuff up, but you know what it is.
Yes.
He pulls figures out of the air. They're not true. They're lies. He's been lying about the aid that we've been giving, the amount of it. And people would accept it coming from the President of the United States, but they're lies, and they're not fully true. We've given $175 billion to Ukraine, and 70% of that has stayed right here in the United States, by the way. It's because we're in the midst of modernizing our own military. This worked out terrifically. We're modernizing it, which we were going to do anyways. We're giving them the stuff that would be mothballed, which is what they're trained to use effectively. And it's worked out well. He's claiming that Europe hasn't done as much. The facts are facts, not MSU. Europe has given more to help Ukraine than the U.S. has given them. and Macron corrected him.
It was great.
With that yesterday. And they're grants. By the way, these were grants. Some of them are loans. Most of them were grants from all these countries, which means they're not going to be paid back. But I'll tell you this, and it's important because you asked me the question about, you brought up the question about rare minerals and these kind of deals. While I was in Ukraine months ago, I met with the Ukraine American Chamber of Commerce. These are all business people that are actually, amazingly, still doing business there throughout the war. And I must tell you this, the appetite for investment from the United States, from Europe, and indeed from China into Ukraine is enormous, because after this war is settled, they are going to be the powerhouse of Europe. They are going to have the best military industrial production in Europe. They have all these very smart technical people, highly educated in computer science, entrepreneurs moving forward. They're the breadbasket of the world. They're an agricultural powerhouse, and they have these rare minerals. And there's an appetite to do it. In fact, the genesis of this, I believe, was, Zelensky to be a friend and to deal with Trump. He's the one that invited a discussion. Let's talk how we could do a mutual deal on these rare minerals. And that's great. That could be good for both times if it's a normal negotiation. Trump is acting like a mafia king, sitting there shaking someone down for protection with a person that has a gun over their head and the existence of their country and everyone that lives there on the line. It's so reminiscent of 2019, I think the year was, when Trump held up $400 million of congressionally approved weapons to help Ukraine as he was shaking him down to get involved in a corrupt, manufactured, story about how his political opponent was involved in some bribery. None of that's true. None of that was proven. In fact, the only thing that's been proven on the election front in this way by a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Commission is that indeed Russia has been involved in our election and indeed involved to help Donald Trump. And that's the way he views the world.
Bill Keating, we only have a minute left. There are two major things that are happening in your district that some believe are at risk, and you have a minute to tell us whether they are or not. The replacement of the bridges to the Cape and the wind farms, which obviously Trump is totally against. How worried are you about both of those projects?
Well, we're watching that closely. I think it's very fortunate that we got the $2.3 billion over the line on the Sagamore Bridge. And if we didn't do that, we'd be in great jeopardy.
We don't have the cash,
I feel
do we?
More
do we have cash or a commitment?
There's contracts, there's grants, there's a whole series of grants.
Why would he honor a contract?
That's a good point, knowing him.
Okay, how about the windmills?
This is a federal asset. The bridge is a federal asset. It's
Okay.
a federal responsibility, and the Commonwealth is coming into play, and they're partners with this. So I think they'll have a big legal problem if they ever try and go in that direction. With the wind, it's very concerning because although I think, Vineyard Wind is they were far enough down the road, but people should understand it's the entire wind project.
I know that.
That's the vanguard for the entire East Coast, and the capital will fall apart because of what Donald Trump has done. And in Massachusetts, when Charlie Baker was putting together our energy policy, the wind power isn't a luxury. We closed down Pilgrim. That's a huge gap, and that was going to be filled in part. And I don't want to shock people, but we've had meetings in the past with utilities where there'll be rolling blackouts. And the area I represent in particular is the end of the line. So I'm very concerned about that.
Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate it.
Good to see you, Congressman.
We have been speaking with
thanks.
Congressman Bill Keating, who represents the 9th District of Massachusetts. That's down toward Cape Cod and in Cape Cod. He represents them in Washington, of course. Up next, okay, just enough time this hour for two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Join GBH on March 26 for a sensory chocolate tasting. We'll be sampling a variety of chocolates and learn some unique facts about cacao beans. Reserve your ticket by March 7th at gbh.org/events.
Support for our programs comes from you
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Boston Children's Museum, featuring Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, a graphic exhibit. Open now through May 4th. Daniel and friends help young children navigate their world, and parents guide their journey. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org/Daniel Tiger.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Right after the 1 o'clock news, CNN's John King will join us. But first, it's time for two more things. I don't know if I have to explain this anymore. This is where we dedicate a couple of minutes to a few things that Marjorie and I care about that we didn't have anywhere else to shove into the show. So, Marjorie, what's yours?
Well, we got a little picture to show you. Maybe you can put that up on the screen. Screens at the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Apparently, they were hacked yesterday, Jim, to show this caption. There it is, "Long live the real king," and that, of course, would be Donald Trump. And it's accompanied by this AI video. Okay, there's the picture, but you really need to see the video because you see Trump toe-sucking Elon Musk's very nicely formed feet. And when you can see the actual video, I mean, Trump is really getting into it there. He's really sucking hard on Elon's big toe, and then he works in between the toes, and his other hand is stroking Elon's instep, kind of pleadingly, sort of full on, like begging for a love grovel in return. It's kind of like Heath Ledger madly embracing Jake Gyllenhaal and the Academy Award Best Picture winner there, Brokeback Mountain. Remember that movie?
I don't think it won Best Picture, did it?
I think it did win Best Picture. I think it did, yeah.
Crash beat
so
it,
the question is, what are we to make of this effort? We presume it was produced by federal workers.
Wait, it's not real?
No, it's AI.
Oh, okay,
it's AI.
thank you.
It's AI. It's not real. But, federal workers, and by the way, most of these people don't have more than 2 weeks to go. We've learned this in the government shutdown without getting more money. These are not people bringing in big bucks. Middle-class Americans, mortgage, rent payments, car payments, daycare payments. They're going to be among the millions of workers that are left with no income by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, the richest man on earth. So I think the only thing we can make of this, Jim, is at least so far that Donald just can't quit to Elon.
But thank you. By the way, it's 2 left feet. If you looked at the AI, it is 2 left feet which is interesting.
They always leave a telltale sign.
Okay, here's mine. There is nothing, Marjorie knows this to be true. You all know this to be true.
Oh, it lost the Best Picture, somebody said. Crash won.
No, not somebody said. Jim Browdy said. I am your co-host on the show. I said it.
I thought it won.
It lost to Crash, which was a horrible movie, by the way.
Horrible movie.
Horrible.
Horrible movie.
I said that. Horrible movie.
Heath Ledger was the most good-looking man on earth.
He was very good-looking.
He was good-looking.
You mind if I say
He's
something?
no longer with us. Go ahead.
He's no longer with us. Thank you very much.
Yep.
As I was saying, Marjorie, there's nothing I like more than a discount, and there's nothing I like less than when a discount is actually an increase. Now, you've all heard that in response to the governor urging that National Grid and Eversource cut March and April gas bills by 5%, the 2 utilities decided to double that and cut them by 10%. So far, so good. But the 10% you will save over the next 2 months, I assume you all know this, you will have to pay back later in the year when bills are lower. Your bills will increase. So it's a wash, correct? Actually, no, it is not.
No, it is not.
In a file, it should be called chutzpah. We learned this deferral of the 10%, which you will pay back, will not only be added to charges later in the year, but that National Grid customers, not Eversource, National Grid customers will not only have to pay the 10% for the 2 months back, they will be charged interest on the deferral of almost 5%. So the discount you're getting is actually an increase in your gas bills. So, state regulators, the Department of Public Utilities, I don't think this is what you had in mind when you told the gas companies to cut your bills. And one last thing, in the Globe story on this, they say Eversource and National Grid, though, are committed to providing longer-term relief to the ratepayer. What they didn't say was, as long as they pay it back with interest. Well, I mean, this is really a scandalous story.
And you heard what Bill Keating just said. Pilgrim being shut down, the nuclear power plant being shut down, the wind farms, as many as they can shut them down. Thank goodness Vineyard Wind is on its way. But that would have made up the difference. But so I guess your bills are going to be even higher now.
Again, you get a 10% discount for 2 months. You pay it back in total. And one of the utility companies, you pay it back in total with interest. so you've lost money in the transaction. That's a hell of a deal.
I think it's a kind of a shafting, Jim.
And let me
That's
tell
what I
you,
would
people
say.
are so angry that 3 ratepayers are going to tweet about it. Let me tell you, they are really angry, you can tell.
Okay.
Okay.
We are out of time. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. He went out and interviewed a bunch of people, Trump voters, to ask what they think about the president. Now we'll tell you, or he'll tell you what they think. Up next, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. And McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system, with locations in Woburn and Boston. McLean.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Bradley, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. CNN Chief National Correspondent John King has talked to Trump voters about how they're feeling about the tumultuous new term this far. He'll zoom in to say that many who are suffering because of those policies are still totally on board.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then something a little cleaner than politics. How do you do your laundry? Do you wash your clothes in cold or hot water? Separate light and dark colors. Everyone has their laundry routine, sometimes leading to domestic strife when your partner shrinks your favorite sweater.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. The Department of Veterans Affairs has cut an additional 1,400 jobs as part of the Trump administration's cost cutting. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports veterans groups have condemned the cuts.
Job cuts at the VA now total around 2,500, which the Veterans of Foreign Wars, VFW, called indiscriminate firings. Nearly a third of VA staffers are veterans themselves, and several of those let go say they received excellent reviews before sudden termination for poor performance. Veterans fired from the VA Suicide Crisis Hotline told NPR they were let go and suddenly rehired days later. Senators on the Veterans Affairs Committee from both parties say they have asked but not received explanations from VA about the cuts. In a statement, VA said none of the jobs cut are mission critical and that VA continues to hire for more than 300,000 critical posts that are exempt from the federal hiring freeze. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
House Speaker Mike Johnson is working to gather enough votes to pass a budget resolution, the first step in moving ahead with President Trump's big fiscal agenda. Johnson says he plans to hold a vote tonight, but it's not clear if he has the votes yet. It is facing pushback from Republicans worried about cuts to social programs and fiscal hawks who say the $2 trillion in spending cuts that go with it don't go far enough. And Johnson is facing a ticking clock because a continuing resolution that funds the federal government runs out on March 14th. If a new one isn't passed, a partial government shutdown will take place. And also, big parts of Trump's 2017 tax cuts expire at the end of the year. And that means most taxpayers will see a rate hike if Congress doesn't act. Smoke from the wildfires in Los Angeles County last month was loaded with lead for several days. That's according to new data published in the Center for Disease Control's weekly update. NPR's Alejandro Barunda has more.
For about 2.5 days at the beginning of the fires, the smoke blanketing Los Angeles was even more health damaging than normal wildfire smoke because it contained much higher levels of lead than normal.
So we're talking about an increase of about 110 times, and that is compared to just a few days before the fire.
That's Harula Bailaka. She's a researcher at Caltech and an author of the new analysis. She and colleagues were monitoring the smoke in real time from a sensor site about 14 miles from the Eden fire. She says the lead probably came from paint or pipes in older houses that burned. Long-term lead exposure is associated with health problems like brain and reproductive issues. The spike subsided after a few days. Alejandra Borunda, NPR News.
Weaker than expected consumer confidence numbers last month. The Consumer Confidence Board says its January index was lower, its biggest monthly decline since August of 2021 over economic concerns. Wall Street's trading in mixed territory. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Cambridge Police Department reported shots fired near Kendall Square yesterday afternoon, the latest in a string of gunfire incidents that Cambridge has faced over the last couple of months. In a citywide alert posted shortly after 3:30 p.m. yesterday, Cambridge Police Department noted that officers responded to multiple gunshots that were coming from Bishop Allen Drive just after 2 p.m. while responding to an unrelated call. The officers called for assistance, attempted to intervene when they observed several suspects flee the area. There are currently no known victims, and police say that they don't believe there's an active threat to the community. The incident, though, comes on the back of multiple shootings in Cambridge over the past several weeks. Worcester officials say they're trying to get a handle on litter scattered across streets and sidewalks. One of their plans involves installing up to 200 combined trash and recycling bins throughout different neighborhoods. The city recently surveyed residents on where they'd like those new bins to be. Miranda Hultham is Worcester's Zero Waste Coordinator.
I've seen the lack of trash cans. I've walked down the street before, finished my iced coffee, and had nowhere to put it. And I've also heard a lot of the voices around our community saying that this is a need.
Worcester officials say they'll finish installing the new bins by the end of the year. Celtics in Toronto tonight. The Bruins host Toronto at the Garden. Exhibition baseball. Red Sox are at Atlanta today. Clouds and low 50s. We are at 52 degrees in Boston right now. We'll take it. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru, who, along with its retailers, is partnering with Operation Warm to provide more than 130,000 children in need with brand new necessities like coats, shoes, and socks. Subaru, more than a car company.
Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be joined tomorrow by the State Auditor, Diana DiZoglio. She's going to be here for her first session of Ask the Auditor, taking our questions and yours about 1 o'clock tomorrow. Hello again, Jim.
I'll be here for that, Marjorie.
Yes, we will.
We're joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent and, I believe, just announced their chief axe thrower. That would be John King. John, welcome to the show. Nice job there, my friend. That was very impressive.
It was a lot of fun. This is my second Tuesday in a row from the Denver airport. Last week I was coming to Colorado. This week I'm on my way to Canada, so I hope the noise isn't too much. I'm sorry. I have to do a better job with my Tuesday schedule.
Oh, really? Well, I'm dying
Please
to
do,
know.
yes.
Are you going to Canada for work, I presume?
I'm going for work. I'm
Good.
going to test, let's just say, the attitudes.
Yeah, there have been stories this morning about Americans going to Canada. Let's develop your Canadian accent, etc.
That was Borowitz.
Yeah, was it Borowitz? Okay.
Yeah.
But I think there are stories in general about that. I think people are worried about going to Canada now. Anyway, you did some great reporting about visiting these voters out in Colorado. We're going to play a little sound before you elaborate on what you found out there. This is a guy you talked to who doesn't think Trump is thinking through what he's doing, but he would still vote for him again.
A three-time Trump voter who calls the president unfocused and arrogant. But Democrats should hold the celebration. But if you had a do-over tomorrow and you had to pick again between Trump and Harris, what would you do?
I would still do Trump.
That seemed to be... Oops, there's still... I heard somebody talking.
No, it's background noise at the airport, yeah.
Okay, so that seemed to be the consensus? I mean, you talked to a bunch of people. Tell us what they said to you.
So it was interesting. We talked to a bunch of Trump voters, and every one of the Trump voters we talked to on camera said that they would vote for Trump again. However, half of them did raise reservations. Now, I'm not saying the president's in any trouble. It's only a month in. I would be careful. But if I'm a House Republican, that's a battleground congressional district. It's 50-50 as a newly elected Republican congressman. A couple of them said, what is Elon Musk doing? Why does he have access to Social Security? What about my tax files? Seems unfocused. So here's what I would lay out as the early test. Again, Trump voters, half of Trump voters sometimes say, I wish he would be more polite. I wish he wasn't so caustic in his tone. But they don't question the policy so much. To have these Trump voters questioning what he's doing, to me, was interesting. Again, I wouldn't make too much of it just yet. But you've seen some people showing up at Republican town halls as well, saying, hey, what's going on? Trump was elected by his voters to close the border and lower costs, fix inflation, get the cost of living down. And I think if we've seen no evidence that's happening. New consumer confidence survey again today, the second one in a week, saying consumer confidence is in decline because prices are still high and inflation is still high, and they're worried about the tariffs. That's the reason I'm going to Canada. So I want to circle back in a month, 2 months, and 3 months to see if the impression was, do what we elected you to do. Fix the economy and close the border. Don't get caught up in all these petty side acts. And if they view the Musk thing as a petty side act, I think it could hurt them politically. It would undermine Trump politically, but he's not on the ballot again. The people that would hurt the most, remember 2018, when people got tired of Trump, they punished House Republicans.
We don't know yet the impact of the appeasement that Trump is doing toward Russia and Vladimir Putin and settling this war between Ukraine and Russia. But I mean, I've mentioned 3 times. Why not mention it again? I'm old enough to remember that you'd hide under your desk when you were a kid, worried about the Russians blowing us up. I can't help but think that is going to impact somewhat. I mean, we're aligning ourselves with North Korea and Russia and Belarus and authoritarian places like Hungary?
Again, one of the questions is, why don't you hear more from Congress, right? You hear it from Mitch McConnell. You hear it from a few old school Reagan Republicans. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, used to be one of those Reagan Republicans, that kind of mold, who's now carrying out these policies. It is a remarkable turnabout. Literally in a month, the United States foreign policy has been turned 180 degrees in the other direction. And this president calls Zelensky a dictator, and then he says he doesn't know if he would use that term for Vladimir Putin. I mean, your eyes don't lie. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, Putin is a dictator. Putin tried to steal and has stolen pieces of a democratic neighbor. Vladimir Zelensky, for all his flaws, nobody's perfect, was a democratically elected leader and has been courageous in the face of this Russian invasion. So the United States president, literally on a dime, has turned, and he's taken Putin's side on almost all of these things. We'll see where the negotiations head out. But yes, the striking part to me, and I asked a couple of the Trump voters in Colorado that, and this is a sort of a, what do you want to call it, a trap or a reflex? Say, oh, well, we're way out here in Colorado. I don't know enough about that. Right? So they don't want to talk about it, but they're not willing to criticize Trump. He has changed the party in that way. The America First thing to many people means, who cares? We don't care. But there's a difference between, let Europe settle its own issues and, forgive me, sucking up to Vladimir Putin. So I think, Marjorie, you raise a key point. We have to see over time if people think that's not a strong president, that's weak. Why are we saying Putin's a good guy?
Yeah.
Can we get back to the economy for a minute and your trip to Canada in light of the fact that Trump said yesterday we are going to do tariffs and again with Mexico and Canada because they've mistreated us or whatever it is he said. The only polling number I've seen in the last week, we talked to our listeners about this at the top of the show, John, that was really bad for Trump is only 32% of voters, which is almost zero in a poll. 32% of voters said they approved of how Trump was dealing with inflation. Is this a potential, and he said he'd bring down prices on day one, obviously it's day 30-something. Is this an Achilles heel for him? Or yes. Are we as wrong about that as we've been about every other thing with him? You say yes.
Yeah, I say yes. Look, this was the reason that the Democrats had such headwinds against them last election. First President Biden and then Vice President Harris. Mm-hmm. You've heard me say before, I think President Biden being invisible for so long, was a big part of it too because he wasn't able to explain things. But look, the reason a lot of soft Trump voters, people who voted Trump, then Biden, who went back to Trump, why did they do it? They thought Biden's economic policies weren't working. They thought their costs were too high. They couldn't sell their house. Interest rates are too high. The guy in my piece, you played the sound, David Hayes, the rancher, he says eggs are like diamonds right now.
Yeah, that was great.
And he's right. And he's right if you've gone into the supermarket lately. So absolutely, the number one thing all voters wanted, even people who voted against Trump, want cost of living to be set, to come down. For Trump voters, it's the border and cost of living. So if we're having this conversation, it's only a month. So you're right, Jim. You can hold him accountable for his promise he said on day one. But to be realistic and to be fair, we're 30 plus days in. Yeah. So it's not fair to blame him now. But if we get to 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that's when you're going to see Republicans in Congress getting nervous if prices aren't down, because that was the number one mandate of a lot of people who didn't want to vote for Donald Trump because of all the personal stuff, but who thought he would fix the economy.
John, I just want to say, I was just texted by a friend who did not see your piece in Colorado yet, and he said, "What's with the axe?"
Yes,
reference.
exactly.
Could you describe what I'm talking about, please, John King, if you don't mind?
One of the voters we visited, 28-year-old entrepreneur Austin Jenkins, one of his small businesses is the Greeley Hatchet House, and you go in there and you can. I did not. It was the daytime. You can get a beer. You can get a beer or 3 or 4, and you throw hatchets at targets. And it's actually, if you need a team building exercise, you guys after the show one day.
I don't think so. Thank you.
Find one. It's I hate to say it, but it actually gets stress and tension out of the system. And I turned out to be not so bad at it.
No, you were quite impressive. I mean, it's like you're playing darts at the bar, but except you're doing it with a heavy, they looked heavy anyway, hatchet, but you were right there in the circle. We were very impressed.
I'm sure your listeners are just loving us. Some Dorchester kid walking around throwing axes. That's just great.
Yeah, we don't do that around here, I guess.
We're talking to CNN's John King on his way out of Colorado and to Canada.
So there's a lot of speculation, John, about the bloom being off the rose, maybe a little bit at least, with Elon Musk because of the people like Chelsea Gabbard and Patel, that's Kash Patel, that's running the FBI now, and other people saying they didn't have to follow Musk's orders. It was voluntary to report on the 5 bullets of what they did last week. Do we think there's any indication of that, or is that just a little blip and Elon keeps going full speed ahead?
No, I think you're onto something there. The fact that you have some members of the Trump cabinet saying ignore him, or at least you don't have to answer the email right away, and the Office of Personnel Management, which is the HR essentially of the federal government, yesterday saying you don't have to answer this. Those things don't happen unless they see something, right? I always say, and I always caution people, my reporting on the road is anecdotal. I'm talking to voters. It's not scientific. I don't have thousands. I have 6 or 8 here or 4 there and dozens there. But you heard it. We heard it on the ground. People saying, what is he up to? And then you see it in some of the other town halls Republicans have had around the country. And I'm always a little suspicious about town halls because organized groups know they're coming and they show up. But still fair. They have every right to be there, by the way. I'm just saying it's not necessarily, representative of the district. But then you see people in Trump's cabinet, MAGA people in Trump's cabinet, and the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, pushing back on Elon Musk. That tells me that does not happen to somebody who has such hindered access to the Oval Office and the President of the United States. That does not happen unless they see political trouble. So is it a pause button or a stop button on Elon Musk? We don't know the answer to that. But they hit the pause button pretty hard yesterday, and that does not happen by accident. They see something.
Well, when you say they see political trouble, I would assume if you're Patel, Chelsea Gabbard, or whoever is head of the Office of Personnel Management, you don't do that without calling, the chief of staff to the president on the phone and say, is it okay that I do this? Because Trump in the Oval Office with Macron yesterday said something like, it's an interesting idea, or it's a good idea, or something. Obviously, it's got to get a sign-off from the boss, right?
You are correct, sir. They are not acting willy-nilly. Now, did Kash Patel call Trump, or did he just check in with the White House? I suspect it's the latter, just checked in with the White House. But remember, look, the biggest test for these people is going to be, can they run these agencies? Trump has put a lot of ideologues in charge of very large and very sensitive government agencies, right? So you can focus on the ideology, or you can focus on the experience or the inexperience. My test since day one has been, can they perform when something happens in their agencies? Do they have the management skills and the chops to run these agencies? So if you're Tulsi Gabbard or Kash Patel, if you know that pressure, I'm not defending them, but if you know that pressure and spotlight is on you, and you run such a sensitive agency, you want to lose some of your experienced people right now in this willy-nilly process? They do want to shrink the government. The American people want the government to be shrunk. They just want it done in an organized fashion, so you don't have a day where you need the guy with vital skill set, and it turns out, we fired him by email yesterday.
Well, you got to wonder what the dynamics are at a place like the FBI, where they'd come in and Kash Patel at the top, who has done a 180, and then Dan Bongino, the talk show host. At least he was a cop and a Secret Service man, so he's had some experience, but none in the FBI. Is the people inclined around them are inclined to help them or let them fail? Because I would imagine there's a lot of loyalty to their fellow agents, because a lot of these people have been there for 10 and 20 and 30 years.
Can I add one thing to that question before? And you saw it on CNN last night too. Anderson Cooper played some sound from Bongino saying that every FBI agent who had anything to do
with January 6th.
The arrests on January 6th should be immediately fired. So it's even worse.
Yeah, because FBI agents who did their job on January 6th now have a target on their back of the bus. I was talking to Andrew McCabe, who was the number 2 under James Comey, and I know that opens a whole box of worms, right? But Andrew McCabe was the deputy to James Comey, and I was asking him about this, and he said, in his case, and he was remembering the deputy directors before him, he said each of them had 20-plus years experience in law enforcement, and most of them 20-plus years experience inside the FBI specifically. Before they became deputy director, because the director might be somebody with a broader swath. It's been like a federal judge, Judge Webster, for example. It's been James Comey, who had FBI experience, but other experience. So you need somebody who knows the intricacies of the agency. To Marjorie's point, look, if you're an FBI agent and you're mad about what's happening, you still took an oath to defend and protect the American people and to solve crimes and to fight terrorism and things like that. So I suspect they want to do their jobs as best they can. It's the as best they can part. When you're worried that you might get fired, you're worried your phone's being tracked, you're worried if you even just have an offhand flippant comment about something at the office, which we all do every day, that they're going to write it down and fire you. So the nervousness, I'm living temporarily in a building right now because I'm having repairs done in my house. There are a lot of federal workers in the apartment building I'm in. Just every day they say they're just nervous, that they won't use their real email, that they won't talk to friends in the office, that they go out to the coffee shop to say anything. That is not a way to go to work every day. It's not a way to go to work every day if you're working at McDonald's, and it's not a way to go to work every day, especially if you're doing sensitive healthcare jobs, or sensitive law enforcement jobs, or sensitive national security jobs. And so at some point, yes, he was elected saying he would trim the government. He didn't do that in the first term, but he was elected saying he would do it. But how they're doing it is scaring people. And any organization doesn't run well if fear is in the bloodstream.
By the way, the reason John is having his apartment worked on is because there's so many axe holes in the wall. It's like he finally decided I have to have a rehab thing done here. John, I can't remember who did the poll, Reuters, whoever did it the other 2 days. Maybe it was you guys. I'm not sure. 73% of Democrats say they're unhappy with how their own party has responded to Donald Trump. That's on one hand. They want him, I think they mean more aggressive. On the other hand, another guy who spends a lot of time on CNN, James Carville, writes a piece in the New York Times and says, don't do anything. Play dead. Let them bury themselves. Do the Democrats' leadership, do they have a strategy how to, even if they can't regain the control, because they don't have control, do they have a strategy about how to deal with Donald Trump?
There's a broad debate across the party, and someone like James essentially means that Trump will set himself on fire to give him time to try to stay out of the way. I think James would also agree that you had some Democrats go after Musk in his role and saying, why is this unelected billionaire who has so many billions in federal contracts? Why does a guy who has living, breathing conflicts of interest going agency to agency in the United States government? I think Democrats are getting a bit of traction there, but on the bigger picture, Donald Trump, James's point is that, the economy is the number one issue, and the Democrats need to figure out, a consensus on that, on how they would approach things. And they'll get a chance if the House Republicans can get their own act together on this budget that extends the Trump tax cuts. Are there going to be Medicaid cuts? Are there going to be things like that? But his point for now is if you don't have a single coherent strategy, don't have, Senator A doing this and Senator B doing that, and Senator C doing something else and confusing people about what you stand for, to let it play out a little bit more. But I can tell you that all of those Trump voters told me they would vote for Trump again. Now, they're conservatives. They're in the conservative part of this congressional district. So they're not inclined to vote for Democrats anyway, but that none of them really paused that much before they answered the question tells me that, yes, a lot of Democrats say, how did Donald Trump get there? And my answer would be, look in the mirror. I don't mean that in a nasty way. Democrats need a better message when it comes to these economic issues, especially among blue-collar Americans, guys like that rancher David Hayes, who work with their hands, he's about to hit retirement age. Social Security and Medicare matter to him, but he doesn't see the Democrats as speaking to him. And so I think James's point is don't keep firing up random neuron firings. Just let it settle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying that Democrats don't speak enough to white men, especially young white men. They got to improve on that. But, we had a conversation with Anand Girdadas, young guy, political commentator, very smart guy, saying he thought what the Democrats needed was an Andrew Cuomo-like, not Andrew Cuomo, because, of course, he got in trouble.
He's a sexual harasser.
Yeah,
Other than that, he'd be a great spokesperson.
But before he knew he was a sexual harasser, he was doing great day-to-day updates on COVID because the president was doing these really weird COVID press conferences, and Cuomo was doing very reassuring press conferences.
And lying about the nursing homes in New York, too, by the way.
Well,
It's
he did.
true, yeah.
He did. But the point, his point was, if there could be somebody, I don't know if Pete Buttigieg is the guy, he's a great talker, but the Democrats need a person to talk every day, the counter-narrative. I don't know if there's anybody that could do that, but to balance, I mean, some of the texts that we get on here from people that see these lies by Trump and they believe them, or they read these things on X and believe them.
You make a really critical point, Marjorie, in the sense that, when you're the party out of power, you don't have a single spokesman. But Vice President Harris can try to seize that role if she wishes. She would be the leading spokeswoman because she just ran as the nominee. She can try to seize that, and we'll see if she does. But in the meantime, you don't have a leader of the party, right? And think about when Joe Biden was president. Donald Trump was still the spokesman for the biggest slice of the Republican Party, and he never stopped talking. He never stopped campaigning. So he had 4 years to build up. You're in a thing now where, look, Donald Trump can't be on the ballot again, although Steve Bannon says they should try, but let's set that aside until we get there. But it's always a challenge for the party out of power. Who is your spokesman? Do you have, or if you have many, people sort of competing to be the lead spokesman, are they at least giving a coherent message? We didn't have that with the Republicans the 4 years of Joe Biden because it was Donald Trump and the Nikki Haley's and a few people saying we can't do that again, but they lost. They were overwhelmed by him. So that is a problem for the Democrats, but that's what the next 2 years are about. These congressional elections in 2 years, the gubernatorial elections, it is essentially every one of those races, even mayor's races, is an audition for somebody, for people to say, wow, I like that. That person makes sense. Let's give them a higher stage, give them a bigger megaphone.
John, I know you have to catch a plane, so instead of talking about 2 years, let's talk about 1 month. March something, the 14th or whatever, the government would shut down unless there's some kind of deal. To avoid a shutdown, recently, the Speaker of the House has depended upon Democratic votes. And I can't quite figure out if the Democrats want the government to shut down and put it on Trump's doorstep, or if they feel federal workers have been abused enough over the last few weeks and we can't also stop their paychecks. Where do you think, or do you know where the Democrats are on lending votes to a speaker who doesn't have enough Republican votes to keep government running?
I think, of course, they don't want the government to shut down. They don't want people to have pain, but I think they're going to watch how this plays out because, remember, Trump ran for president saying Biden was an idiot and I can fix everything. If Donald Trump has a government shutdown in his first 2 or 3 months in office, that's going to hurt him. And so there's the policy argument for the Democrats. There's the compassion argument for the Democrats. Let's try to help keep the government open. But if you see a revolt among Republicans, I think that, there's a logical Democratic answer. You have a president, the House, and the Senate. Do your job.
Hey, one last thing. Jim Browdy is very upset that the tush push is about to be eliminated from the NFL. He calls it the tushy pushy.
No, I do not, Marjorie. You say I do. I do not.
He has a technique where he stands in the doorway at our office and he waits for people to come by and shove him in.
Okay, fine.
So I know you're a big sports guy. Are you concerned about the demise of the tushy pushy?
Look, the competition committee takes a long time. You think the federal government has a bureaucracy? The NFL does too. So I think Jim is safe for next season, but we'll see.
Thank you, John, for your little bit of reassurance. I cannot wait to see what the Canadians have to say to you. And the Colorado piece, like everything you've done, is just really insightful, and we thank you for it. Everybody should watch it. John King, thanks.
Thank you very much, John.
Safe trip.
You learn when you listen. I love it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you do. You do. And his reporting around the country has been great all during the campaign and now what he just did from Colorado. And he is going to go to Canada where Americans are speaking with a Canadian accent. And that's what's going on. Andy Borowitz says it. And so do people that are traveling there now. You have to go to Montreal.
Can I say one more thing about his all over the map thing? We say this almost every time. Obviously, these are not polling. They're random people that he's been following. But you get such a much better insight into what is the motivation, the inspiration for votes and behavior when John sits down and talks to somebody. It really, really is a public service. So please watch his work on CNN.
Okay, we have been speaking with CNN Chief National Correspondent John King. Of course, he's from Dorchester. We always like to say, okay, after a quick break, a big bombshell in the Washington Post, Jim,
A bombshell.
says we should care less about the colors of our clothes in the washing machine and more about the fabrics. We're going to open the lines to ask you about your laundry habits. Do you separate the colors? Do you separate the sheets from the underwear? Do you need to wash things on cold all the time? Can you wash things on hot? It still feels like nobody taught men, of course, how to do it the right way. And this is a domestic dilemma, Jim. And for a lot of couples, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
3 years into Russia's war in Ukraine, President Trump says he's hopeful an end could be weeks away. Don't count on it, says Alexander Vindman.
Russia is not going to be satisfied with the level of appeasement that the Trump administration is offering because the Ukrainians are not willing to capitulate.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly, the retired lieutenant colonel and former Trump staffer on Russia, Ukraine, and his new book, On All Things Considered, from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browder. She's Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow on the show, back here at the library, our first ever Ask the Auditor at 1 p.m. Diana DeZoglio has joined us many times, but she is never, not her doing, but ours, never taken questions from listeners and people here at the library. She will do that tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We're ending the show with some much-needed myth-busting, some real truth-telling, as Marjorie said from the Washington Post, via this article, Skip the Laundry Stripping. I don't even know what that is. And other myths about laundry. In it, cleaning expert Jolie Kerr, Marjorie, exposes 12 myths about laundry. You ready for this?
Yep.
Instead of separating your clothing items by color, you should separate them by fabrics.
I did not know that.
I have no idea what one fabric is or another. That's a problem for me.
Well, you know, towels and fleece and lint-prone
Right. Well,
fabrics,
I haven't said that yet, but wash your towels and fleece together, but never with your athletic gear, like with your jock strap. No towels and jock straps together.
Okay.
And more detergent does not equal cleaner clothes. Do you buy it? Should we start following these new laundry rules, or does the old standard work just fine? Or are you one of the people who could care less and just throws everything into one load? Our number is 877-301-8970. We also want to add another question to what are your laundry habits? Beyond the rules around getting your clothes clean, we want to hear about domestic strife.
That's
Does your
the big
partner,
one.
Well,
That's
remember
the
we
big
did
one.
the dishwasher a couple of months ago? Does your partner just not know how to fold the right way? Let us know about whatever intra-household strife there is around how to do the wash. And by the way, there are a lot of couples, I didn't know this till this morning, that as part of that, they wash their own stuff,
Yes.
and the other person washes their own stuff because they want to avoid the fighting.
That's right. But there's also this great piece in Slate that says husbands married to women should do all the laundry.
And what's the argument for that? Because the wife's doing everything else?
The argument is that the wife is doing everything else. She had to she went through a pregnancy. She had the baby.
Yeah.
She had the postpartum depression. She's nursing. She's doing all these things, and she doesn't want to have to worry about whether the kid has got 3 sweatshirts, got clean sweatshirts because she went through so many sweatshirts on Saturday. She wants the husband to do it because women worry more about their kid going out with stains all over their clothes, and the husbands should just pick up the laundry basket and clean it.
Now, you have the opinion that colors and white clothing should not go together. in the dishwasher?
I throw everything in together.
You do?
I do.
Because you can barely find the washing machine and the clothes.
I just throw it in together. If it's and I don't wash things on hot unless it's like somebody was sick or something like that.
That's what they say.
Yeah. If
you
somebody
have
had norovirus,
which you did.
I did.
Did you wash your clothes hot?
I did.
There's no chance.
Yes, I did. All the pillowcases, all the bed sheets, all that kind of stuff. Hot, because it's very contagious. I didn't want anybody to get it. But I just throw everything in, and it works fine. And I never send anything to the dry cleaner. Like I wash all the silks and the and all those things in Woolite.
Oh, and you need one of those special bags. You know, those little bags,
Well,
those
you
little
can get a
zip-up
special
kind
bag,
of
but you
things.
just put them right in the sink. I like.
Oh, you wash them by
it
hand?
smells. Yeah. You just put them in the sink with a little Woolite, and you rinse them out. You roll them up in a towel.
What is the motion you're making?
That's when you're shaking them around.
You're shaking them around.
You're moving them up and down, getting the soap all.
Do that for a second so people know how to do it.
Dry cleaners are so expensive.
You do that for the camera so people know how to do it. There it is.
There you
Okay,
go.
do that. And then what do you do afterwards?
Then you take it out and you get a big towel and you roll it
Show
up
us how
in
you
the
roll-
towel.
you roll it up in the towel.
You roll it up in the towel,
Yeah.
and then if it's a shirt or a blouse, you can just take it out and put it on a hanger. Or
What else
if
do
it
you
is
do?
a sweater,
Wow.
then you lie it flat to dry.
Oh my God!
I know. I'm really
It
good
is
at this
really
stuff, Jim.
incredible.
I am really something.
But we want to know more than habits. Marjorie apparently is into habits. I'm into strife. What?
Donna reminded me of something that we should have put in here.
What's that?
Why do I always lose one sock
Oh, that's a very good question.
in the dryer?
That's a very good
What
question.
is that about? Think about how
Yeah.
many times. And how you hold on to the one sock because you figure you're always going to find the match, and you never do.
Well, can I tell you?
Never do.
This may sound conspiratorial, but I'm only saying because you raised it. I lose an individual sock quite often. I'm totally convinced. Put the wash in, go to the living room. A Trump supporter comes in through the back door, takes the sock, and 877-301-8970. I have to say, when we did this in the dishwasher context, it turns out the strife in the average household about
It's a
how to
big
load
deal.
the dishwasher
Yep,
was so
huge.
intense. And I'm curious to know if it's the same sort of intensity around washing machines. 877-301-8970. You know why it's bad to put extra detergent in if your clothes are extra dirty? Hello, I'll try that again. Do you know why your why you should not put extra detergent even if you think you're helping because your clothes are really dirty? Do you know why?
It's bad for the machine?
No.
Why?
Because if you put too much detergent in, some of it cakes on the clothes or the items, and it remains there. Thank you very much.
This woman is really suffering.
What is it?
Oh my God, my husband complains about how I fold his clothes. His shirts have to be folded like they came
That's
out of the
exactly
store.
right.
He complains about how I load the dishwasher. He wants to completely clean all the dishes and put them in the dishwasher. Mind you, I do 99% of all the work in the house. He accuses me of hiding his clothes when he can't find them. Like I have nothing better to do than run around the house hiding his clothes.
Okay.
I love that one.
Let's start with Bernice in Bridgewater. You're first
Hi,
on Boston
Bernice.
Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Bernice. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. And I can't believe my first call through is on laundry because
That's very
I've called
sad.
So many
Huge.
times not gotten through about environmental things.
Well, this is good. Go ahead.
I have a good tip in the wintertime.
What is it?
After it snows and the sun comes out, you take your big puffy blankets and your pillows and your rugs and you take them and put them out on the snow, and the sun kind of causes the melting snow pull items like dirt out of your items.
What?
And not only that, the cold. Yeah, you just take your bedding right off the bed and put it on the front lawn.
Well, now, Bernice, even if that works, and
there is snow.
since it's your first call, I'll be nice to you and say, assuming it works, how do you dry the things after they've been soaked in the snow?
Well, you turn them over before you bring them in, and put them over a railing a little bit before the sun goes down.
Okay.
But you will sleep so well because it's fresh, and the cold air also kills mites or anything. You know,
Mice. Mites, not mice. Okay.
Oh.
Now, wait, can I just go over this one more time before you hang up? Your contention is if you lay your your clothes on the snow will draw the dirt
I never
out
heard
of
of that
the
one.
stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Something new to try.
Yes, but it has to be sun. Sun
Has
has to
sun.
be out so that it's kind of a
Okay.
dual effect.
Well, that was an excellent
So
first
that's my
call,
tip.
Bernice. I
Thank
can't
you, Bernice.
say anything better than that. Thank you very much for the call. You ever heard of that before?
No, I've never heard of that before.
Okay.
Here's Aiden in Vermont.
What do you say?
I wish I could password protect my washing machine to stop my husband from using it. No matter how much I complain, how he messes everything up, he just keeps doing it over and over and over, and I end up having to rewash everything because he doesn't do it crazy. It's driving him nuts. You know what's really awful, too?
No.
First of all, it's awful not to have a washer-dryer.
Horrible.
That's really horrible.
Horrible.
The second worst thing is to have a washer-dryer in the creepy basement. If you have to share it with your neighbors, which I did for a long time.
And you hate your neighbors.
You hate
I don't
your
mean
neighbors.
you do.
Then you have to think you get down there and they've got the
Yeah.
washing. Do you fold your neighbors' clothes because you need to use the washing machine?
Just put them on the
Then you're
floor.
closing their little thong underwear and stuff like that. You feel really kind of weird about it.
Yeah, it's a little
I
intimate.
don't like that carrying the laundry, but I got my own washer and dryer now, Jim, so I'm all set.
You know what I do? We have a tenant in the house.
Mhm.
I put their clothes out in the snow, and so that if they're not clean enough by being on the snow, only when it's sunny, like Bernice said a minute ago.
Yeah.
They get even cleaner or whatever. it is.
Okay, let's go to Richard.
By the way, that is a real dilemma.
What,
That
the
is
basement-
a
the
real-
basement laundry?
No, not only basement laundry, is when you think you're
Sharing
doing a
it.
favor for your neighbor or
Right.
your tenant or your landlord,
Yeah.
and you have their intimate clothing.
Right.
Should you be touching their
I don't
intimate
know.
clothing?
It's the question. It was a big dilemma, Jim. But they've moved away now, and I have my own washer dryer, so I don't have to worry about it.
Remember when I was a
one
dorm
on top
counselor?
of the other.
I'm
That's
only going
weird.
to tell half the story, which
Okay.
is totally unfair because
Yep.
it gets, whatever, spotty. I was a resident fellow, known as a dorm counselor when I was in law school at NYU. I was an undergrad, a dorm counselor in one of the undergraduate dorms.
Yeah.
And let's put it this way: someone stole my laundry, and I'll leave it at this.
Oh, you told me this story.
I found it. Well, I think I can tell this. No, I can't actually tell this, but so I shouldn't have started. I'm really forget everything I told you. Wind back the tape.
This is a very kinky story,
It was
as I
a very,
recall,
it was
Jim.
very kinky.
Very kinky.
I was not the kinker, but it was kinky.
Oh, that's your claim.
That is my claim. Richard in Boston. We're talking about laundry. I think. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, thank you. First-time caller, a long-time listener.
Wow.
Yeah, I am, as we speak, doing laundry.
Great.
And it's towels. And while I agree that you shouldn't use that much detergent,
Yeah.
I supplement with rubbing alcohol and white vinegar. And hot water only.
You know what I learned today? That rubbing alcohol, and tell me if this is why you do it, rubbing alcohol takes out ink stains in clothing. Is that why you do it?
No.
Why?
I do it to kill germs because I'm a lunatic about things like that.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better
and
than
definitely-
chlorine bleach.
Go ahead.
Oh, no. Chlorine bleach was white. Definitely.
Keep going, Richard. You're doing great. Go ahead. That's
and also rinse twice.
Who?
I rinse twice.
You
I
rinse whites. What do you put besides? Rinse twice. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Wow.
Richard, besides
You're very
rubbing alcohol,
involved.
what was the other thing you said you put in there?
Vinegar.
White vinegar.
White vinegar. Now, would you agree that's a bit
A little
much?
yeah, low at the top.
Or
Have you
would you not?
discussed this with your therapist, Richard?
Wait, he admits it. You
He
admit
admits
it?
Okay.
But you're happy with it?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I am. I feel safe and secure, and it's good.
Well, it's good. Now, Richard, before you go, because obviously you have expertise in this area, what do you think about Bernice's little hack there she described a minute ago, the snow deal?
I didn't hear it.
Oh, she says that the best way to extract dirt from your clothing or towels is to lay them on snow on a sunny day, and the snow will draw the dirt out of the item that needs cleaning. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's something they probably did. The Pilgrims did in 1620. So.
Richard, that was a spectacular call. Thank you. Call us a second time sometime soon. 877-301-8097. Are you good at the laundry, by the way? You're a good folder, you told me, because you used to be a chambermaid, right?
Yes. Well, I also worked in a clothing store. We had to learn how to.
You never told me.
Listen, that's
What
how I
clothing
got,
store?
That's how I got Mulberry Corners.
You did?
Yes, when I was a teenager. That's how I got so good at making bows because you had to
You
wrap
are,
the
but
presents.
let me just say,
I
because
make
people think I don't
extraordinary
compliment.
bows.
No,
That's
not only
right.
bows, you are the best gift wrapper.
Gift wrapper.
Maybe in the history of the world.
I don't have many domestic skills, but
No,
that
you
is
have,
one.
No, you have none. But let me just, no, you don't. You don't have any. But let me just say, you can't cook. But your gift wrapping and the bows, you do homemade bows. You don't like stick a thing on there?
Yes, they're very easy to do, actually.
They're really.
But I learned at Mulberry Corners how to do that, how to fold shirts. And,
Mulberry Corners in Fall River?
No, it's actually in a very swank section of Cape Cod called Osterville.
Ooh.
Osterville. Yes, it was right across the street from the Lilly Pulitzer store.
I'm sure it was.
Which was very, very swank and swish and posh. Let's go to Paula in Rhode Island. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Paula.
Hi there. How you doing?
I think we're good. Thank you. How are you?
Very good.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
I want to tell you, you mentioned dishwashers,
Yeah.
and my birthday present last year was that my wife took an hour and let me read the entire dishwasher manual to her and talk with her about my philosophy of loading the dishwasher.
Oh, my God.
And it was so nice. And honestly, I don't think she's changed anything, but I'm so much more at peace.
Is that a true story or is that made up?
No, that's a true story.
I love that story. I love that. And so did she just sit there and nod her head in a sweet way, or how did that go?
No, we read through the whole thing, and we actually learned things we didn't even know about it. It's this bronze, super duper multi-featured thing that, we didn't even know that it could do some things that
Doesn't
it
get
does.
much better. You should have filmed that, my friend. That would have been something. Paula, have your wife call sometime and tell us. In fact, have her call right now and let her speak for herself here about the experience. That was great, Paula. Thank you for sharing that with us. We really
Sam
appreciate
from
it.
Fairhaven warns if you use too much detergent regularly, you can also have costly problems with your septic system.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to use that HE detergent in
I don't know
certain
what that means.
machines.
What does
I don't
that
know.
mean?
I don't know what it means. New
Why'd you
machines,
say it then? What does that mean?
HE, because you look for the HE.
What's HE stand for?
HE. I don't know what it stands for.
Okay,
but
HE.
yeah, you have to have that on the cover.
HE.
And you have to be careful with the kinds of phosphates. You don't want to use detergents with phosphates because they're very bad for the environment.
How do you even know about HEs if you don't know what it means?
Because I have a relatively new washer and dryer, and I really love it.
You do?
But they're on top of
You ever read the whole manual like Paula did to
I've
her
not
wife?
read the whole manual. No, I haven't done that. But sometimes I get nervous they're going to tip over on each other because they kind of shake around.
Yeah.
And they make a lot of noise.
By the way, that's something to be nervous about because I think that's happened to everybody, that their washer... How many of you had your washer and dryer tip over? Everybody, 3/4 of the audience. It's a real danger.
Well, when they're one on top of another, it makes you a little
all the
nervous
time.
sometimes. You know
It's
what I
one
mean?
of the- It's more likely than being hit by lightning, by the way.
Pat in Chestnut Hill, thank you for calling.
Pat in Chestnut Hill, hi.
Hi, guys. In these times, I'm always happy to have some comments.
Yes,
Thank you. So are we. Go ahead.
Long-time listeners, third or fourth time getting
Excellent.
through.
Thank you.
Laundry maven. I consider my
Laundry
family
maven.
considers me a laundry maven because I had bed and breakfast for like 30 years, so
Oh.
I did a lot of laundry.
Okay, good. How's it go? Are you good at it?
Oh, I'm excellent at it. My daughter still hands me over all the stained clothes from her family, and I get the stains out probably about 85% of the time.
That's fabulous. Pat, thank you for sharing that.
Listen.
You want to know what HE stands for?
High efficiency.
Yeah, and listen to this. HE detergents are formulated to work with HE washing machines, which apparently you have.
Yes, that's right.
Which use less water and have shorter cycles.
That's right. It's the environmentally correct
friendly.
washing machine.
Okay,
Listen
good.
to this. If you put your pots and pans out in the snow, it
Yeah.
whitens them, cleans them up,
Does.
brightens them. Baking trays, anything, leave them out for a few days, and they come up
That's
sparkling.
true.
Did you know that?
Well, that's what was her name? Bernice
She was talking
telling us
about sheets
No, I
and
know
bedding.
she was. Well, let me just tell
I
you
never heard
something.
about baking
I
trays.
told you, and I asked you not to tell this story, but since you said this, I told you when the plumbing in my house was down a couple of weeks ago, I'm
Yep.
waiting for the plumber.
Yep.
I had to shower for work. I lay in the backyard naked on the snow. I did. I waited till the sun came out, and I felt clean as a whistle. It was incredible. That was
Wow.
even before I spoke to Bernice. It was incredible.
Listen to this.
By the way, Jamie said, this is like the dishwasher thing. Jamie says, we have hundreds of texts. People are totally unhinged. Just another area where people are very anal about their behaviors.
Well, not Bob from New Hampshire.
What's
He
he
is a
say?
man of few words.
What's he say?
He says, my wife adds vinegar to every load. I don't. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, the guy who called before does vinegar and, what did he say?
Vinegar and
Rubbing alcohol.
Rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they say you're supposed to use that instead of chlorine bleach, which is bad because it ruins your it ruins the fabrics. Okay. People are very, very. This person says they also use white vinegar instead of fabric softener, better and cheaper. Okay, go ahead.
Here's
Jim.
an anonymous text. My partner started playing hockey, and I encountered my first jock strap in our shared laundry pile. Usually, I'll just wash both of our stuff. I didn't know what to do with a cup, so I just left the whole thing on the floor, which I think is a totally reasonable behavior for you to engage in. Congratulations to you.
Okay.
Wait, that was you? Anonymous. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
it sounds like
really?
Anonymous
Okay.
is one of our coworkers
I think
here.
so.
Nice try there. Kevin in Dartmouth, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Kevin. Hello.
Hello. Two quick things.
Yeah.
First thing is my wife doesn't even let me in the laundry room, so I don't get to wash clothes.
That's a good one.
Marjorie, I have a solution to your sock problem.
What's that?
When you raise 3 teenage daughters and you look at the missed sock bin, 3 of them, I decided 35 years ago to use elastic bands on my socks, and I still do that. I turned 75 in 2 months, and
Happy
I still
birthday.
put elastic band around my socks. And I think everybody should do that. It would save everybody a lot of time. All my kids laugh at me. If they're listening now, they're going to really laugh even harder. But that's what I would do. Thanks a lot.
Wait, don't go away. Do you understand what that does by putting Marjorie? Do you understand what Kevin's thought?
Keeps them together in the washing
I
machine.
see.
Yeah.
Elastic
I see.
bands.
Yeah, it's
I got it.
A simple concept.
Well, it wasn't simple enough for me, obviously. Thank you.
79 cents for a bag of rubber bands.
That is fabulous. You know what I do, and this is true. I should have said this before. I buy multiples of the same socks all the time for a whole variety of reasons, including that. By the way, listen to this. Am I allowed to say this on the air, or is that not? That Anonymous, can I say who the Anonymous was a minute ago about the jockstrap?
Sure.
Somebody talk, well, what do you mean? No, you're not well, in any case, we'll get back to this. It's not, yes, it is you. Tara, I'm talking to one of my coworkers.
This is our former producer, it says.
No. That's not my last name. Oh, a different Hannah.
Different Hannah. Yes.
Oh.
And her fiance is listening. And he just texted to say he's learning some great laundry tips right now. So we're doing a public service.
So it's not the current Hannah.
It's
a
not.
prior Hannah.
It's not the current Hannah. But we have a lot of
Thank you,
really
Hannah.
tips that we haven't shared.
What
First,
are they?
always wash whites in hot water. Hairspray.
No, you are not.
Yes, you are.
No, you aren't.
Yes, hot water for whites. That's what it's. Oh, that's a myth. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
That
It's
is a
the
myth. I have
opposite.
just the opposite.
Okay.
You're not, sorry, that's a myth. Here's another myth.
Jamie just
that
wrote, we only
hairspray-
hire Hannah and Zoe's to work
That's
on the
right.
show. That's a very good point.
Another myth is that hairspray
Sorry.
removes ink stains. Apparently, it does not. And silk.
No, rubbing alcohol. No, can I explain that? Here's the
You
explanation.
don't need hairspray.
Hairspray used to have rubbing alcohol
That's
in
right.
it. Now, since it does not for the most part, you do rubbing alcohol like that guy who called before, and you get ink stains out, okay?
That's right.
Thank you.
And you do not have to take silk and wool, as I said before, to the dry cleaner. You can wash them by hand.
Is that because you're cheap, or is that because you figure why waste time going to the dry cleaner? Why do you do it?
Because it is very expensive, and I can do it so easily.
And does
why-
it look the same way when
Absolutely.
you go? Can you iron,
Jim,
by the way?
I can iron. I have, as
don't
you know,
think so.
8 sweaters, the same
Exact
sweater in
same
different
one, I
colors.
know. I have this
and I wash these right in the wash.
You can really iron, tell the truth.
I can really iron.
You can iron, so it's nice?
Sometimes I even get starch sprayed
you
on.
don't.
Yes, I do.
Is that really true?
Yeah, to make a little. Well, again, I used to be a waitress, and you
You're
have
an incredible
to have nice
homemaker.
bows in the back.
Is that what it's about?
That is what it's about.
It's amazing.
Carol from Lynn, thank you
Hello,
for
Carol
calling.
from Lynn. Hi.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking the call. So I just wanted to say, years ago, my mother told me that if you took a braided rug and put it out in the snow,
Yeah.
maybe overnight or whatever, while it was snowing, it would push all the dirt out.
This
And then
is
she
not-
would let it hang over the railing or whatever, and it was clean.
But Carol, let me tell you the difference between you and Bernice. Bernice said the sun had to be out for it to work. Your mother said it could happen overnight when even I know there is no sun. So one of you, either your mother or Bernice, got it wrong. Is that a fair statement?
Or we could maybe just split the difference.
Exactly. Nicely put, Carol. By the way,
you know what's really
thank
awful?
you, Carol.
You
What?
wouldn't do this because you're not a man who wears lipstick.
I
but
am a man.
I have lip gloss right here, my lip gloss.
Yeah.
I put it in my pocket sometimes, and then
Yeah.
I put it in the washing machine.
Oh.
That has really ruined a lot of nice things when I forget to take it out of
So
there.
here's from Anonymous on the same subject. If you share a washer with someone you don't like leave a piece of red fabric in the washer so they will have pink laundry when they do their wash.
Not very nice.
What's wrong with that?
Well, that's awful. That's what happens if you leave your lip gloss.
But if you don't like the person.
Your lipstick is even worse. Then it melts in the dryer and it gets all over everything and leaves everything with spots.
Oh, that's horrible.
It is horrible, especially if you have your nice sheets in there. You know, they're all spotted when they get out.
Huh.
Mary from New Hampshire. What do you think, Mary?
Mary.
Hi, I can't believe this is the subject I'm calling in on.
I know, it's horrible.
Very important, very important.
And it's very important, but two things. One is my mom used to always wash her hand wash in Woolite, and I do the same thing.
Exactly.
I always remember her doing that. She rinsed it 3 times. And the second thing I want to share is I live in a 900 square foot mill refurbished condo in Manchester, and space is limited.
Yeah.
I got from England this thing called the pulley made, and I mounted it to the 10-foot ceiling, and you lower it, and you put your hanging stuff on there to dry, and then you pull it up.
That's unbelievable.
Very
And
nice.
You don't use any floor space for drying.
What's that called?
hand
The
wash.
puller upper? What's it called again?
Pulley made.
Pulley made. That is fabulous. Mary, thanks for sharing that. Here's a fabulous text from Mitch. I have a shirt that's dry clean only, which is another way of saying it's dirty.
That's
I mean,
a good
it's expensive to get stuff
It's very
dry
expensive.
clean.
You don't have to. You can put it in Woolite.
Yeah, but then you got to iron it. Ironing is not easy, and it's time consuming.
Ironing is not very hard.
It is.
They have
It
these
is hard.
great irons now with all the temperatures for silk and cotton and
It takes a long. How long does
synthetic.
it take you to iron a piece of clothing?
Not very long. I'm
How
pretty
long?
good at it.
How
I'm pretty
long?
good at it. Well, if it's a shirt, that's more involved.
How long is a shirt?
5 minutes.
Well, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, well, it's okay.
Get
go
over
to
it,
the,
Jim.
Go to the dry cleaner
Okay,
and get your
fine.
shirts all done. I mean, you talk about ironing. You used to wear those coats with lapels with that flipped
You call
up.
it the Flying Nun shirt. It wasn't a coat. It was a shirt.
No, it was not. It was a jacket.
Oh, it was a jacket, yeah. It was a
It's a
jacket.
Flying
Why is
Nun
it so funny
jacket,
to you?
Because you were on television.
Okay, fine.
With the lapels flipping up.
Okay,
like-
Anonymous says, which, by the way, the fact this question is being asked is Marjorie's fault,
Yeah.
and I resent it. Anonymous, what setting do you wash Dickies on?
They're,
I mean, really?
they're permanent press. I can tell you that right now.
That
They go
is
on the
really-
permanent press setting.
I am offended by the question, in case the anonymous texter
I mean, let me tell
wants
you,
to know.
it's something like getting a new washer and dryer, though. You really feel like a new
That's
person.
great.
And you can put it on the intense cycle. If you have to go somewhere, you can put it on 20
Well,
minutes.
there's a problem.
And they do it really
There's a
hot.
problem.
You don't want to leave, you know what, you don't want to leave the house. You have to be very careful. I would never
No.
leave the house with a dryer on.
No, let me tell you,
They
especially
say
if you have
can,
young
but
children,
I'm suspicious.
because they generally fall over on the children. I mean, that is a really dangerous thing. You know that. You know what I'm talking about?
You're
You're the one who just told me they fall
yeah,
over.
but that's a stacked one.
Oh, I'm sorry. These
Yeah.
are on the floor?
Yeah, well, no, I know.
Okay,
well, you
good.
never know about.
Okay,
Once
great.
I had a bird nest in the
Oh,
thing,
sure you did.
that
Okay.
goes out to the
Okay,
dryer.
yeah.
The dryer that goes
That's
outside
nice.
of the
Okay,
house.
fine.
People have that problem.
And
Jim.
the vent, we
in the
call
vent.
it.
They had
yeah.
a bird's nest in the vent.
Okay, good. That's a good story. Now, Jared, what are we talking about?
very distressing.
Jared, I assume you're about as particular about your laundry as any human being on the planet. Is that don't shake your head. You're lying.
It's not true. I throw everything in there. It doesn't matter.
And how about the
Me
folding?
too. The color white thing, it doesn't matter.
How about the folding? Tell us about the folding of your
No,
laundry.
I'm not a really good folder either.
What are you talking about? Do you believe this for a second, Marjorie?
I think you send your shirts to dry cleaners.
I think you do,
Okay,
too.
I will say I do send my dress shirts to the dry cleaner.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Okay,
I
fine.
iron the napkins because anything flat is kind of fun to iron.
That's right. That's
But-
right. Do you starch them? I think it's very important to starch them.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know you could do that.
Oh, yeah, you can. You spray on starch. It's great. It makes
I'm
them
with
like
Jim.
hard as rocks.
What am I? What?
It takes too long to iron a shirt.
Takes far too long to
Yeah,
iron
it's a
a
pain.
shirt.
No.
Marjorie, by the way, is willing to iron your shirts. By the way, she said during the break that she would do whatever was needed for her coworkers.
I know exactly where her car is because she frequently parks in my spot now. So I'll just throw my shirts into the back. So I'll
Stephen
make it very
Gloucester
convenient for you.
just texted, and I said, I foolishly left my tickets to your show at the library in the wash. Damn it. That is sad. What are you doing on that show of yours, Jared Bowen?
So there is a really, really fun exhibition in New York right now called Luna Luna, and we are going to be talking about this. This is an amusement park, basically, that was designed by artists in the 1980s,
Yeah.
and it's just so much fun. So we'll talk about that because it disappeared for a while until Drake, of all people, helped rescue it. And then we'll speak with the artist Jay Critchley, who has a pretty interesting and provocative new exhibition looking at the power of corporations in America. And Lisa Simmons is here to talk about all things film, including the Oscars and then James Bond under new management.
Who's
Yeah.
going to win Best Picture?
I think it's probably going to be Anora.
Really? Have you seen that?
No,
Have
I
you
haven't seen
that?
anything.
No, I have to watch it before.
You don't
It's
think
one of
because
few
the
I haven't
Pope
seen.
is sick, Conclave gets won the Screen Actors Guild the other night?
I don't know.
I thought about that, but I think the voting is probably finished,
Oh,
so
maybe.
it might not have an impact.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
Huh.
All right.
What's the one with Aidan Brody?
Oh, the Brutalist. It might. I mean, that's what makes it fun this year. Is we don't know.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Why do you keep?
He's
he
the art
doesn't
senator.
know.
He's the art senator.
I said I didn't know about laundry. I didn't say I didn't know about Adrian Brody.
That's right.
Jared-
You interviewed him. Didn't you interview him?
Okay.
No.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
oops.
Well, this is a good conversation. It's really good.
Guess it was somebody else.
Probably was. Well, it must have been somebody else. Okay, Jared, go do your show, and we won't bother you again. Thank you.
Bye.
What's going on there,
Say,
Margaret?
we're done.
We
Thank
are.
goodness.
Thank
I think
goodness.
I've
That's
reached the end
No,
point.
you have, and then some. I'd say. Go ahead, quickly.
Thank you for listening to another edition
Thank
of
you.
Boston Public Radio, and to everybody that came down to the Boston Public
Thank you all
Library.
for
Very much
coming. We
appreciate
appreciate
that. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. We also have a great TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, Jared Bowen is going to come back. I'll ask him again who's going to win all the best pictures. Our national security expert, Juliet Kayyem, is going to talk about what's going on with Russia. It's a really wild and energy panel with Joe Curtatone of the Alliance for Climate Transition. We're going to find out about the wind farms down the Cape. And State Auditor Diana DeZaglio, who's taking our questions and yours for the first time on Ask the Auditor. She's the one that's trying to audit the legislature, not having much luck so far. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, not the other Hannah who texted me
this
before.
Hannah.
With additional support from
Whatever.
Tamsin Vital. Our engineer is John the
This Tamsin, not the old Tamsin.
Tamsin Vital.
Okay, exactly.
Do we have one before? Tamsin
No,
before?
but just in case
okay.
we did.
All right,
Go ahead.
okay. John the Club Parker, our executive producer is Jay Bologna. When I say, ooh, wow, I have to hurry up.
Hurry up.
Maddie Geyer, Patrick
don't
Lally,
okay,
Juan Jose
they know you
Cadena,
appreciate it.
Newsfeed Cafe, and the Lennox
Okay,
Hotel.
bye.
Bye.
See
Thank
ya.
you very much for tuning
Bye.
in.
Thank you.
Bye.
What's trending?